Everywhere whiskey is enjoyed, it seems, it is now being made. Despite the refined nature of this exquisite drink, Scotch is in a fierce global competition for hearts and drams. There are pretenders to Scotland's throne across the world, even here. Cheeky bastards.
Hello, whiskey folk. Hello and welcome everybody to another Thursday vPub. That was David Heyman. That was a little clip from a BBC documentary I thought would be a fantastic intro into the topic that we have tonight, talking about English whiskey and the English whiskey scene, which is only really recently a thing again. I don't necessarily agree with the statements from David there. I think he's kind of playing it up a little bit, that idea that people are after the kind of Scotch whisky crown and the idea that the English are being cheeky bastards and things. But it's an interesting topic nonetheless, and it's one that's been on the list for me to share with you for a while. I reached out to Andy down at Malt Box to join me tonight and to kind of lead me through the scene a little bit, because while I'm very curious and I have been trying English whiskies, I don't always feel completely comfortable there. Obviously, my comfort zone is very much Scotch, of course. But some of the whiskies I've been trying from down south are set up and pay attention whiskies. And I think it's worthy to talk about the scene in general, what they're trying to achieve, some of the whiskies that's come out, and the sheer number of distilleries that are there now. In the description box below, I talked about counting 16 distilleries. Well, since I announced this live stream and wrote that passage, we're up at 24. In fact, Amy Seaton chimed in on Twitter and suggested that there are actually 26 distilleries. Now, the first whiskey was 2003, and the first distillery to open in England was 2006. So that's more than a distillery a year. It's quite amazing. And like I say, I'm interested to kind of explore it a wee bit more, to understand a bit more. And that's why I've invited Andy from Malt Box on, a fellow enthusiast and YouTuber. And I'm hoping that he's going to be excited to share some of the discoveries that he's made exploring whiskey, English whiskey, over the last few years. Fantastic to welcome everybody in again. This is back to a weekly thing now. The vPub is going out on a Thursday night only. Sunday nights, I'll be reserved for the occasional vPub lock-in session with patrons only, or kind of occasional Sundays where I've got some extra topics or subjects to talk about. It might be the case that a guest can't make it easily on a Thursday, so it might be worthwhile putting a weekend vPub out. But it's back to the Thursday night slot tonight. Welcome everybody. I'm going to jump into the lounge and welcome all you beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. Hope you enjoyed that wee intro. David Heyman. That the segment that I showed you at the intro there, I took it from a BBC documentary that I think is available on Netflix or Prime or somewhere, some of the streaming services, depending on your region, but it's called Scotch, the story of whiskey, and it's a 3-part thing. It was originally made by the BBC, very, very good production, lots of, it was quite broad brush in scope, but it's very well fact-checked, and it's done in a very good, high-quality way. And lots of the interviewees were kind of Dave Broom, Ian Buxton, lots of distillers, Rachel Barry's involved, lots and lots of people, Nick Morgan from Diageo. So a lot of kind of whiskey who's who are involved in that. If you can find it, it is there on YouTube as a pirate. So you will be able to pick it up on YouTube as well, but you might find a better quality version of it at whatever streaming service you use. Phil and Deepa are in Whiskey Mystery. They were live. I dropped in to say hello to them. They were live before the vPub went out tonight as well. And they were doing another one of their fantastic blind tastings. Great to welcome you in, Phil and Deepa. Toby, Whiskey Shared, is in. Wonderful to see you, Toby. Jimmy Legg, Blair Conrad, of course. Jimmy, always wonderful to welcome you in, as well as Tabitha Adams, Graham Fraser, Daniel, a Whiskey Dram, Greg over in France, Greg's Whiskey Guide, as well as Gregor in Oregon as well. Bill Monteith, you star, good to see you, Bill. Always nice to welcome you in, as well as Marcus Kreitner. Hopefully Christina's sitting next to him as well tonight. Falsgraf, Graham Young is here. Good to see you, Graham. Good to see you, Falsgraf. And he's saying, oh, nice map. That map that I opened with as well is a fantastic map, a fantastic wee asset. And I pinched that from the Cooper King Distillery website. Again, a little bit of insight there that the English whiskey scene is seeming to be quite open and collaborative, and they're very aware of each other and realizing that if they come at this together, that kind of rising tide to lift all boats. So that would be very encouraging if they did it that way, and if they realized they don't really have to compete with each other for what they're doing. Menro's Multi-Mission is in. Great to see you. My friend Whiskey Jason over in Germany. Great, fantastic, Jason. Good to see you in again. Graham Horner. Aaron Hardiman is in. Looks like a new name, Aaron. Nice to welcome you here if it is new. Malcolm Douglas is here. Daniel Vermaas in Hungary. Spiritworks Tom. Tom, I messaged you earlier. So if you are... if there's obviously talking about that collaborative nature of whiskey, there's a little thing started up called the English Whiskey Society. And Tom, Spiritworks Litchfield, Tom is one of the founding members of that. And I suggested to him that if he wanted to drop in to kind of plug it, I'm going to talk about it a wee bit later anyway, but I don't know too much about it. But I was going to suggest that if Tom wanted to drop in, he'd be welcome to drop in later in the stream. You can try and get my attention, Tom, or message me here. But you don't need to. I'm quite happy to talk about it. And I've got the link already teed up as well. Whiskey Weekend Drama is saying it was a great series. I agree with you, talking about Scotch, the story of whiskey, absolutely. Doc McCallan, Fine and Rare is in. Good to see you, my friend. James Burgoyne is here. Radek is here. Lee J. Brown. Frank Peathead. George Leyland, great to see you, George. Jamie Brown, Drew from Arizona. Jimmy Legg, I mentioned. Wonderful Tony Whiskey Stream Fi. Billy Saunders, Philip Story, Andy Ardbaggy, and Tom R. from Chicago. Wonderful to see so many of you in. It's always fantastic to have you here and have your support. Let's fix that chat window so I can keep you in my sight and try and keep your attention. There we go. So yes, as David started out at the intro there, he's David Heyman, that little section, he kind of made a play about this idea. And I think that lots of people hear that there are world whiskies being made. If I speak from a Scottish perspective, let's say, but anybody sees kind of other whiskies being made and thinking, oh, Scotch isn't the only whiskey. Well, of course it isn't, and it hasn't ever been the only whiskey. But for various reasons over the years of its heritage, it's kind of become probably the most prominent of the category, Scotch whiskey. And I think it still remains unique. Any other world whiskey that's produced is not trying to be Scotch. And even when they do try to be Scotch, they end up being something different. And I think that's wonderful. It's one of the fantastic things about whiskey. It's almost like it takes care of itself. And one of the really cool things I've noticed about whiskey coming from England is that, yes, it's made in the Scotch style oftentimes. They've got a wee bit more freedom to do this under less regulations. But generally, despite them making something in a very, very similar way, it's starting to take on its own character, its own shape, and showing us that kind of there's an infinite variation probably available to us in whiskey making. Really, what we're enjoying out of England right now is nothing trying to compete with Scotch. If we take those 24 distilleries that I mentioned, if we add up all their capacity and combine it, we don't even get to the size of a medium-sized Scotch distillery all over those whole entire 24 distilleries. So it's a completely different thing. They're not making whiskies to go into blends. They're not making contracts. They're not filling casks. They're making their own product to be sold for the purpose of enjoyment. It's kind of a variation thing. It's a flavor thing. It's a quality thing. And that's only for people who enjoy whiskey. That's only a very, very positive thing. More experiences, more variation, more things to engage with in time. So if it is going to compete with Scotch, I guess that it's only going to compete with maybe the newer, smaller distilleries that's coming out of Scotland and Ireland and everywhere else in Europe. But that's the boom that we're seeing in whiskey. We're not seeing a blended whiskey boom. That's flat. That category is fairly flat. The boom that we're seeing in whiskey is that. Premium whiskies, batch made, small quantity, things that are made to bring engagement and integrity. Yes, it's more expensive, of course it is, but that's what we're seeing these days. Toby is saying, would you call English whiskey a craft whiskey scene then? You know, I've always kind of wondered how you would define craft. Yes, you could call it craft, but honestly, it's almost, if you do that, there's a suggestion there that as soon as you go into large-scale production, there's no craft. You go to Springbank and talk about their 500,000 litres that they're making every year and tell them that that's not a craft distillery. So where's that line? Where does it stop becoming craft and become something else? Mass-produced whiskey or something. Even when there's automation, there's a lot of craft gone into that in order to carve out that product. I think craft is probably most appropriate when you can talk about a human hand being actively involved in the production process, probably. So Springbank, Benromac, lots and lots of distilleries across Scotland, and certainly what it sounds like, the majority of the whiskey distilleries that we see, the newer distilleries, springing up in Ireland, England, and further afield. So I think using craft with a small c is fine. And context is everything. So the people that you're speaking to, if you use that word to define it, if you use that as the adjective, as long as they understand your meaning, it's fine to use the word craft. But what you don't want to kind of is label some distilleries as craft and then other ones don't get the same label. I think you have to be careful there. It's quite a subjective thing, perhaps. If you're trying to get my attention, obviously just type Aquavitae spelled correctly or at Aquavitae, and it lights up orange here for me. Should mention as well, anybody that's tuning in from Facebook, it's more difficult for me to see the comments that's coming in Facebook. I'll try and keep an eye on it again. I always say that I'll try, but I never seem to manage it. I'll try and keep the Facebook comments here. Donald Pass is saying Scotch is the only whiskey. That would be a shame, wouldn't it, Tim? Because, okay, it's difficult because there are 140 distilleries in Scotland, probably more now. So even in your lifetime as an enthusiast, to get through all the whiskies that's available from just the Scotch producers is impossible already. So to consider casting your net wider is a difficult leap for some people. They just kind of want to focus on Scotch as a category. But experience has taught me that that can be a mistake. That lots and lots of the best whiskey experiences, maybe even the subject that we spoke about last week when we talked about epiphany whiskies, is there because you are curious, because you want to explore, you want to try new things. Now, if you have a lovely experience and have a nice epiphany with something that isn't Scotch, you can just buy a bottle of that. It doesn't mean that you're going to end up down a rabbit hole that's going to take you away from Scotch. You can cast your net a wee bit wider, be a bit more open-minded, and find some fantastic whiskies outside of the Scotch realm. Right now, a lot of the best Scotch whiskies are in such demand, honestly, in this pocket of time just now. These premium whiskies, these small batch releases and things, that they're literally sold out as soon as that they're released. So when you get to that level of the kind of hobby, if you want to call it a hobby, and if you're chasing that kind of product, then I think it's more appealing for you to change or let's say open up your mind a little bit to potential experiences elsewhere. And then you don't get involved in that rabble, chasing down the next release from XYZ distillery that you know you're going to have to be sitting there online waiting for it to go live in order to have any chance of getting a bottle or know somebody. When it gets like that, I tend to back off. It's better to be left for people who really, really want that whiskey. And if it's for me, it'll find me. Or I'll get a sample from somebody. I'll get to try it at the whiskey club, something like that. So for me, I'm always there's always a wee bit of space, and I like to keep a wee bit of an open mind to see what other experiences there are out there. And I have to tell you, with a couple of English whiskies I've tried, I'm very glad that that's the case. Sunday Evening Scotch Michael is saying Scotch is always his number one, but he's well down all the whiskey rabbit holes. He loves it all. His most recent epiphany whiskey was a bourbon finished in Armagnac casks. Wow. Very interesting concept there. Experimental even. Armagnac finished bourbon. Everyone is saying craft, in my mind, means made by hand. No real automation, no assembly line, item production. For example, you see North Star bottling and labeling their own whiskey. North Star is an independent bottler. And that's obviously sourced whiskey. But I mean, you have to say, I think that's right. And it's something I used to believe. Then you go to a distillery where automation is heavy. And then you walk up to the stillman and tell him that he's not a craftsman. Are you brave enough to do that? Because I am not. The same for anybody that's working the fermentation side. And I know that so much of this is automated. Valves and actuators and computer controlled this, that, the next thing. I know, but that doesn't mean it can be done with somebody that's unskilled. And I think we always have to be respectful of whiskey making in general. And Tom is saying check your Instagram messages. Okay. He's got the founder, Richard Foster, in the chat and ready to hop on himself and talk about it. Okay, it might be risky to do that, Tom. I'm going to try. I'll send an email to you. I'll need you to take care of the link for me, my friend, to send it on. And you can send it on to him and drop in. And if the tech works first time, if the audio and the video works okay, we might be able to do something like that. I'll be a bit later in the stream. I hope that's okay. Is that done? I've sent that link on to you, Tom. So Richard's welcome to come in a wee bit later and talk about what he's doing to help the English whiskey scene. Tonight we're going to keep it neat. I've got a guest on. I've got Andy from Malt Box on. I'm looking forward to welcoming Andy. You would have seen Andy back in December when I had him on a vPub to talk about a celebration of 2019. And he joined me. He's got his own YouTube channel. He's been back doing it for about 6 months now after a bit of a hiatus. But he's doing very, very well. And he's just released his 103rd or 104th review. So I'm looking forward to welcoming Andy back. But before that, we're going to have a wee short game of Is It a Speyside? And the reason for that is because my friend Hoyt from the States was supposed to be on a few weeks ago, and through some communication issues and technical difficulties, he wasn't able to make it. I made him a promise that I would get him on when we had a quieter night, and that's happened tonight. So I'm going to reach out to my friend and comrade from the US, Hoyt Hemphill. Hoyt, my friend, so good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Roy.
How are you?
Doing well, staying home, keeping
staying home. Yes. Still a bit. Are you keeping yourself, or is there? How is the legislation and regulation where you are just now? Have you got to stay at home, or is things starting to open up a wee bit?
They're starting to open up. We've started in that phase, and you're starting to have restaurants that can serve outdoors, that sort of thing.
Okay, so it is relaxing a wee bit. We heard some news today here that that's starting to happen here. They're looking at shops being open by the end of the month and things, depending on how you can handle the flow of people and things like that. So, but we don't want to get distracted by the C word, do we?
No.
Where are you? Remind me where you are, you and your wife.
We're in the western bulge of Illinois, about 70 miles from the Mississippi River.
Okay. So you're probably a bit south then of Tom ours in Chicago.
Oh yeah, quite a bit. We go there regularly and have children there in Chicago. So it's about a 3.5 hour drive there.
But that's local for you in the States, right? 3.5 hour drive.
Yeah. Something close is 90 miles away. So.
And I had the pleasure of hanging out with you in Glasgow last year. We had some dinner together and a few drams. You and your wife Leanda alongside. It's Leanda, isn't it?
Leanda, yeah.
Yep. And alongside, it was the one Glassman, Warner and his son, the two Warners. Yeah, that was a lovely night.
We went to that local restaurant that was new for you, I believe. My guide from Isla actually recommended that. He was a Glaswegian.
Well, I've been back there a few times since. That was Ardnamurchan. Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned it, because Ardnamurchan is one of the restaurants that set up screens and pods so that when things start to open up again, they'll be one of the first ready to start taking people in for a meal.
That's interesting. Yeah.
And I have to tell you, Hoyt, I'm ready to eat something that I haven't had to cook myself, honestly.
Same here.
Yeah. My friend, are you ready to play a wee game?
I'm ready, and I've got my mystery whiskey here. You'll notice.
Don't let me see. Yep.
You'll notice the coin. Oops, upside down.
Oh, excellent, excellent. A batch 2, yes, wonderful.
So I'm wearing a Scotch Test Dummies, their 5-year anniversary they had in Wichita.
Yes, that was during a holiday I had, or I think it was a works project. I couldn't make it for their 5-year gig, but I know the T-shirt that you're talking about.
Yeah.
You had a good time with Scott and Bart in Kansas.
Oh, it was great. They had a good event. I hope they can do it again someday.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, I'll give you a little white background here so you can see the color. Let me get that. There you go.
What do you have there?
This is the mystery whiskey.
Oh, you've actually poured it. So you're giving me a color clue as well. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, that's I mean, obviously it means that if I'm asking, you've got a bottle on hand. It's me that has the tricky task of asking tonight.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give myself 3 minutes, Hoyt, and 10 questions, plus a bonus sniper Hurley question to try and guess your bottle of whiskey. Okay, are you ready?
Ready.
Okay, I'll start the timer. Let's have a go. Hoyt, is it a Speyside?
No.
Is it a Highland?
No.
That was a no?
That was a no.
Okay. Is it an Isla?
No.
Oh, wow.
I promised you this wouldn't be a banana skin.
This is core range single malt whiskey that's available and recognizable everywhere, right?
Yes.
Okay, is it Campbelltown?
Yes.
Okay.
Is it from down for you quite
is it from Springbank?
No.
Is it from Glen Scotia?
Yes.
Is there an age statement on it?
No.
Is it 46% ABV or higher?
Yes.
Hoyt, I think you have Glen Scotia Victoriana.
And in fact, I do.
Excellent.
I should have picked a harder one for you.
No, you were very kind to me. I have to say that I'm wondering, and it means we had the Victoriana on actually a vPub quite recently, so it's quite fresh in my mind as well. Yeah. It's a great dram, a wonderful dram. But I'm wondering just how many whiskies are going to be available for this game. How long can this game keep going? But I was trying to come up with a few now. I didn't have them on hand. I don't have them here in the house, but there's quite a few that I found that would be really quite good, sneaky whiskies that would be tricky, that would be challenging. But I think it'd be interesting to get more people on and more people asking the questions to see if they could get to it. Thank you for being kind to me. So anybody in the chat, the first person in the chat in the lounge tonight that guessed Glen Scotia Victoriana, whether it was before or after me, wins themselves a sleeper coin.
I know. Yeah, I see one. Oh, looks like people were pretty early on here. Yeah.
Well, they've got nothing to lose. They can just kind of storm the chat with guesses, and
I think as soon as we got to Campbelltown,
People start throwing things in. Absolutely.
yeah. I mean, there's only 3 distilleries, so it wasn't too hard.
Unlucky this time, my friend. I'll cancel that timer before that really obnoxious noise goes off. Unlucky this time, my friend, but thanks for coming on and joining. Are you going to stay with us till the end and stay till the quiz?
Yeah, I'll be here.
Yeah. You're always a dedicated barfly here to the end anyway.
All right.
Wonderful to welcome you on a vPub, Hoyt. Thank you, my friend.
Okay, slouchy bye.
See you soon. Easy stuff. Easy stuff. Well, I mean, I don't know if it was that easy. What was I down to? 2 questions left before that, but not bad. As soon as I knew that the ABV was above 46% and no age statement, it could only be that, I think, from the core range anyway. So now I'm going to pull in. I noticed that our surprise guest has joined us. I'm going to ask him for a thumbs up if he's okay to wait until a bit later in the stream. Okay, fantastic. And he's calling himself English Whisky Society, and it's Richard. Richard, thanks for joining, Richard. I'll bring you in the stream a wee bit later on, my friend. It looks like the video is good. I just hope the audio is good as well. I'm going to bring in my guest tonight as well. Listen, for anybody that hasn't caught up with this guy, he's obviously a passionate enthusiast, passionate whisky individual, but he's a fellow creator here on YouTube, and he's putting out regular reviews. I like his canny mind. I like the way he's just kind of really down to earth about the whiskey. You've seen him before. I had him on a vPub in December, as already mentioned. But I want to welcome in Andy from Malt Box. Andy, my friend, good to see you. Good to welcome you back to another vPub, buddy.
Evening, great to be here.
Yes, absolutely. Good to have you. What have you got in your glass, Andy?
Do you know what? I've been a bit naughty. I've not had anything yet. I mean, I'm trying to be good. So okay. I've got a selection down here ready to go.
Well, why don't you pour something small? I've poured something and it's been sitting in the glass. When I first had a sip of it, it was playing a wee bit hot, and I think it is quite high ABV, but it's an English whiskey that I've started with. 60.6 ABV. Okay, this is from Helen and Andy Widowson, who's probably in the chat tonight. They're normally always here. In fact, I'm sure I've seen Helen her name scrolling past. She sent me a couple of samples from the Lakes Distillery, and this is the Whiskey Maker's Reserve. This is the number 1, 60.6% PX and red wine casks. So pour something alongside and we can raise a wee glass.
Let's do it.
Have you not even poured anything yet? I'll have a wee nose of this one.
There we go, just a little one. Just to break myself in a little bit. Let's take it from there.
This one's got a nice rich syrupy note on it. Obviously the PX is having a bit of a voice there. Andy, raise a glass and say cheers, my friend. It's wonderful to welcome you back to the vPub. Cheers.
Cheers, great to be here.
How are things going with the channel? Well?
Yeah, great, thank you. Yeah, really enjoying it. I've been back about 6 or 7 months now, and just really enjoying being back in the community and engaging with everyone again, and just, you know, living the whiskey life. You know what it is?
We missed you while you disappeared for a few months, and it's good to see you back again. Yeah. And it's good to see that you've come back and broke that magical barrier of 1,000 subs. But also congratulations. Well, congratulations for that, but congratulations for your over 100 reviews now as well. So you seem to be quite dedicated to it, and you seem to be
making up for lost time.
Yes, making up for lost time. Absolutely. And I hear exactly what you say. There's nothing like when I was speaking to you to do a bit of a tech check, you just put out a video review, and I knew that the phone was hot with those kind of comments coming in, the first kind of comments in. And it's really nice to get that interaction, that feedback. And then you realizing there that you sitting in a quiet room in your house speaking to a camera isn't, there are people watching and listening, and people do get a value out of it. It's really reassuring. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. It's a bit strange being on the other side, isn't it? When you're staring into that little beady camera lens and not thinking too much about the people watching. They all come in.
I've kind of get used to it now, but when you strip it down and when you actually do think about it like that, in that sense, it is still a wee bit bizarre. Especially if you stand in your driveway next to your bin. And your neighbours are walking past, wondering why you're throwing bottles into a bin, looking into a camera at the same time. Absolutely, I do think you're a wee bit strange. You're going to be Sorry, Andy, go ahead.
I was just saying, I do it myself as well. I should probably stop doing it about 3 o'clock in the morning, but I'm with you. I'm with you.
Absolutely. You're going to be my guiding light here, and you're going to kind of help me and share some of the kind of experiences that you've had exploring what must be fun for you as an Englishman as well. And I know that your parents are you're half Scots, as it turns out. But it must be fun for you and exciting to see this scene kind of exploding and more distilleries and whiskies become available. So we'll get to that and kind of have a wee kind of wander through the English whiskey scene here tonight. But what I was going to ask is, how did you get into whiskey in the first place? I don't know if we touched on that when you were on the vPub, and how long has it been? Because you were involved in starting clubs, and obviously you were motivated enough to go and join YouTube. And
yeah, so I started getting into whiskey when I was in my teens, namely when I went to college. So not university, but college after high school. I was going out partying a lot, living the teenage lifestyle, and I was pretty skint, so no money whatsoever. And all my friends used to buy bottles of supermarket value branded vodka and rum, the sort of thing that like just melts metal. They're not great stuff.
Yep.
And I very quickly realised that I could get something in the same sort of like value labeling, Scotch whiskey, blended Scotch whiskey, 3 years old or whatever it may be, but they were always consistently 40%. And at the time, I was making those pennies count. I'm like, I'm not getting 37.5% rum. I'll take the 40% whiskey, thank you very much. And it kind of got to the point where I got a taste for it and I was enjoying it. And I mean, your supermarket whiskies, at the end of the day, someone makes them. It's not like Tesco have got a distillery.
Right.
So yeah, it kind of went from there and into my early 20s, where I was gifted a bottle for Christmas, 2 bottles actually. I got a Glenmorangie 10 and a Bowmore 12, and it just straight away it changed from kind of something that I sort of did to party with to something that I just sat down and was like, wow, this is like another dimension. And yeah, it kind of went from there. And a few years after that, I started my first video blog, like way back in the day, like before Malt Box. I think it was about 2011, something like that, called the Affordable Whiskey Reviews blog, where I started that, and then I set up the Manchester Whiskey Club in 2012, and ran that for about 3 and a bit years, which is really cool. A great society that's still going strong in the hands of the committee. And after that, I set Malt Box up. And just basically getting back into the community and creating content. So yeah,
whiskey drives you to do incredible things. It tends to push your comfort zone a little bit, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah, I mean, there's a time, I'm sure you were the same as me, that the idea of you sitting in front of a camera and putting out content on YouTube seemed utterly alien to you.
Oh yeah. Totally, completely. I wouldn't have dreamed of doing it in a million years. It's like you say, I think it's the drive to do it.
I've always got this little worry in the back of my head that one day I'll look back on this YouTube thing and think, what was I thinking about? What was I doing? But while it's fun,
it's just not you, mate. Don't worry, it's not just you. Every time I post a review, I'm like, what is he going on about? Who is that guy?
Yes, that's right, absolutely. Jimmy Legg is saying that's one thing that everyone loves about whiskey lovers. We are easy to buy for. Aye, that used to be the case for me back at the start. I think my wife has got to the point that she won't just blindly. She used to just go out and randomly take recommendations, but now she'll actually seek someone out that works in the industry, a specialist who knows me. Because she's nervous that she's going to get a duplicate or something I've already got or something I've decided I don't particularly love. And I have to say, I don't know if you would agree with me, the worst person you can ask to make a recommendation for a beginner is a whiskey geek.
Oh yeah.
Because I think it's hard for us to remember the Glenmorangie 10 and the Bowmore 12 days. It's hard for us to kind of go back and remember what that was like. It's more difficult for those whiskies to bring the engagement for us now, I think.
I agree, and I've done it several times where I've recommended things like the Pulteney 12, which is still a great dram, and your Ardbeg 10, and then you kind of second guess yourself and you think, yeah, but what about this? What about this one? this one's natural colour and non-chill filtration, and realistically, the person drinking it at that point in their whiskey journey probably doesn't care.
You're tempted to share with them the one that really opened your eyes recently.
Yeah.
But for them, it's just going to taste like whiskey, right? So,
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Having said that about the Bowmore 12 and the Glenmorangie 10, I often I would recommend both those whiskies to people if I thought that their palate would be suited to those.
Yeah.
It might not be something that I would buy. Actually, I always like to have a Glenmorangie 10 on hand. I've still got a soft spot for that. I do like it a lot.
Yeah. There's a dram for every occasion. There's a dram for every person.
Absolutely. It's that variation, isn't it, that we're talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is a nice segue into England. I have to say, my first experience with English whiskey, and actually, even very, very recently, my experiences with English whiskey were not positive. Can I start with that?
Yeah, fair.
And I think it's okay to start with that because it's going to change to a positive. It was an English whiskey company. It was a lower ABV product. I think it was probably from Marks and Spencer's. You and I spoke about it a wee bit earlier.
Yes.
It was clearly young. And it was kind of one of those things that I thought, okay, they're probably in that situation where they need to get some revenue back in. They need to get a product out there and get revenue in. But they're still very much on their path. This isn't their final product yet. Yeah. So I just parked it. And then there was a couple of releases that came out from the Lakes. Now, of course, these were sourced whiskies. It wasn't their own product yet.
Correct.
If you're selling sourced product, you need to be careful because there will be an assumption and an association with the quality that you present. And I didn't love some of the products that came out originally from Lakes. As I sip this Lakes whiskey right here now, this is a very, very engaging product. There's a bit of body to this. There's a bit of weight. I think this is clearly still quite young. There's a lot of heat still there and, intrinsic heat. I don't just mean because of the high ABVs. There's still a hot spirit. It still needs a wee bit of time, I think, to grow. But there's nice sweetness here as well. I think the casks that they've chosen here are a decent cask with red wine and PX. So, okay, this is interesting. I don't know how much you would have to pay for one of these Whiskey Maker reserves. Would you happen to know what the Lakes was retailing at?
Yeah, I think the latest one, which is batch 3, which was released this month, is 65 from the Lakes website, off the top of my head. So, I mean, it's pretty. I mean, let's face it, it's kind of that's the ballpark for most of the English whiskey releases at the minute.
It's kind of funny we were talking about that. It's where it's settled between that £60 to £70.
Yeah,
now, that's expensive for young 3 and 4 year old whiskey, but that comes with a huge but. We're not comparing it to 3 and 4 year old Scotch. We're comparing it to 3 and 4 year old Scotch from new distilleries in Scotland.
Yes,
and that's a completely different thing altogether. This is not apples for apples. These are new distilleries. These are bringing things out in very small volume. The prices are going, if they can bring it out round about that £60 to £65 mark, that's probably about the punching weight for it, I think. And we understand what they're trying to do there. We can buy 15-year-old Scotch, nice, good quality 15-year-old Scotch for that money, I think. Maybe even a wee bit older.
Yeah.
However, we can't compare it to that. As I said at the outset, it's quite an interesting thing when you add up the capacity of all these 24 English whiskey distilleries, the capacity doesn't even get to a smaller, medium-sized Scotch distillery.
Correct.
So we need to understand. So we can compare it maybe to some of the newer releases that's coming out of the new Scotch whiskey distilleries. And compared to some of the releases, £65 is actually competitive.
Yeah. I agree there. I mean, there's one particular release from a Scottish distillery. I think it was a rye whiskey that was eye-watering in its price.
Well, I mean, again, you would pay a bit more for rye because I know that rye is very, very difficult to handle, especially if your production's set up for malt. For malted barley. I know that rye is difficult to handle, and we would expect to pay a premium for that experimentation, that small batch thing. But I agree that just because it's small batch, just because it's new, or the worst word that you can possibly see when it comes to prices, inaugural. You just know that it's going to be a super, super premiumized price, but it's that for a reason. It's only going to exist once.
Yeah.
Let them get a bit of money back in. Let them try and reclaim a bit of that money that's otherwise going to be claimed by the secondary market if they don't do it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the releasing their kind of core range, I think we've seen it from St. George's in Norfolk. We've seen it from Cotswolds, starting to see it from Lakes now, by the sounds of things. We're seeing it from Bimber as well. The larger batches, the price being about the 60 to 65 pounds mark.
Yeah.
I can stomach that if it's good whiskey. We're going to get to that, aren't we?
We are.
What did you pour there, Andy?
I actually poured. I started off with this. So it's the Filey Bay.
Can I pour that then? You sent me a sample of this.
I did, yeah. Crack on, mate. Sorry, I probably should have led with that.
Tell me what this is, Filey Bay. Tell me.
So this is the Filey Bay Muscatel finish, and that comes from the Spirit of Yorkshire distillery, up in the northeast of Yorkshire, near the coast. Well, Filey Bay, funnily enough. So this is a young whiskey. I believe it's 3 years old. Initially matured in ex-bourbon and spent a finishing period in Muscatel wine casks, which is obviously quite an intense, deep, rich style of wine. Natural colour, non-chill filtered. So there's the colour there. You can see that's in this light. And I know this isn't everything, obviously, and it generally plays quite a small part in my analysis of a whiskey, but I love the packaging. It's lovely, just like the style of it and the way it looks like the sea and the beach, and you've got the kind of the sea down there engraved into the bottle. I think it's a very, very pretty bottle.
Excellent.
Yeah. So
what I've done is to give people context and try and give them a shape of the landscape. I've dropped a link in the chat there that takes them to the Cooper King distillery.
Yeah,
and,
cool.
and they can download that map, that really cool map that you pointed me in the direction of. It shows that lists the 24 distilleries.
Yeah.
And people can pull that up, and they've got a really cool image there that you can zoom in on, and they can see some details of the distilleries. So hopefully that link has made it in okay, that it works. I don't know if the link is a wee bit too long. It should work. And then people can see where that distillery is. So Spirit of Yorkshire. And Muscatel, you said?
Yeah, so initially ex-bourbon, and then spent a finishing period in ex-Muscatel wine casks. I'm not quite sure the exact amount of time that it spent in those secondary casks, but I can't imagine too long, because it's quite heavy influencing style of wine. It's very
if it's an active Muscatel cask, right? It doesn't take many months to add its footprint.
No, exactly.
Skogsmard is saying the link works. Excellent. Thanks, Skogsmard. Listen, you can smell straight away. And I think it's good that I understand why they do this. And I'm sure that there's going to be other expressions that come out of Spirit of Yorkshire that's going to kind of let us taste a bit more of the spirit. Have you got any experience of the spirit without the heavy wine influence here? Or
yes, so I've tried both, pretty much all of their official releases so far. So their first inaugural, dare I say it, batch of Filey Bay, and the most recent, or more recent, should I say, second batch, and they were very similar in the sense they both just benefited from ex-bourbon maturation. I found that there are comparisons to this, but this has particularly a bit of a spicier edge to it. You get sort of like richer, deeper, like something maybe like Severe Marmalade or something like that. Whereas the non-finished products are quite light, quite airy, which they still carry as well in the background, I feel. But I think the bourbon is quite apparent. There's lots of vanillas in there. There's a little bit of sort of like spice, a little bit of sweetness, and arguably it's a little bit more sort of spirity, a bit spirit-led. I mean, the finish is very much the finish is very much almost like new make, very young spirit, I would say. It's interesting. What the arrival is, all the wine, the sweet wine. It develops quickly to that spice, that red fruit and spice. I said red fruit. I'm thinking, let's go a wee bit again, because it's difficult to pin down, isn't it?
I want to see if I get the same thing again. Aye. You mentioned marmalade, and it put me thinking about marmalade, and then I got I can't tell you the last time I had a gooseberry. Probably when I was a teenager. but it's like that.
Yeah.
There's a brightness to it.
A little bit slight tartness to it, maybe.
But it's a dram of two halves. That wine thing, it's almost like the wine sits on top of the spirit a wee bit. I don't know. The wine, the syrupy, sweet arrival, and the spice comes in, and it kind of goes to that long kind of almost. It does taste like new make on the finish. What you're left with on the palate is a kind of new makey thing, which is understandable for being a younger product.
Yeah, and the original sort of non-finished releases had that similar trait in the finish. They were kind of quite spirity, quite new makey. So I mean, at the end of the day, you do see it in quite a lot of young whiskies, not just in the English scene. Finishes are utilised quite a bit. So obviously, it tends to sort of like bulk it up a bit and mask potentially some pricklier elements. I think it's probably one of the worst to use.
I had an interesting discussion at a festival once with a chap from a new distillery. He's a chap I would like to get on in the future, actually. And he talked about when distilleries are being set up, especially new distilleries, there's an idea what age they're going to start selling it at. And they can actually set the production up to produce a spirit that ages quite well.
Yeah.
Or they can set it up to produce a spirit that's going to be a bit heavier and a bit bolder and hang on to its character for longer. So it needs a more active cask, or it needs more time. I just want to make sure I catch this super chat that's come in from Jamie Brown. Interested in thoughts on Cooper King? If either of you have tried, my auntie is 5 minutes up the road. Always thought it's a nice area for a distillery.
Ah, interesting.
Have you tried any Cooper King? I have not.
Do you know what? I've not. But they are, again, quite an exciting little distillery. I actually, I'm in a group on Twitter, sort of a whiskey group, and one of their assistant distillers is actually in it. She's a young lady.
I saw her on Twitter today. I saw her with a bag of yeast.
Yes.
Today on Twitter.
Yeah,
I can't remember her name, but yes.
You got Sophie. She was up a ladder over the mash tun. Giving it a good old stir. Dressed up to the nines, the apron, the big gloves, just carelessly on the top of the ladder, stirring it. So I'm excited to see what comes out of Cooper King, to be fair. It looks like a really nice little operation.
Have they got any mature stuff out yet?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, so still everything's sitting in casks.
Yeah, there might be a couple of cask samples sent out, but not that I'm aware of officially. Although I am more than happy to be corrected, because I'm more than willing to try as many English whiskies as I can. So happy days.
Wow, you put these sample lids on tightly. My goodness. Right, I'm going to pour this other one because I realise that you and we've got at least 3, 4, 5 maybe whiskies to get through.
Oh, aye.
And there's a couple of them that I'm excited to try. I'm excited to try this one that you sent me a sample of very kindly. This is the English whiskey. This is the English 11-year-old.
Yes.
46% ABV, better presentation. Now, I have to say, I noticed the difference. I started off with that 60.6% lakes.
Yeah.
So the full body thing there. It probably was the wrong order to go on to this.
In the deep end, mate. Not wrong.
But I'll pour a wee dram of this from St. George's. Now, St. George's have got some mature product out there now, right?
They do.
11-year-old core range.
Yes. So this is their oldest own expression to date. So they do have, I believe, age stock of up to 13 or 14 years, arguably, off the top of my head. I'm aware that I think North Star might have released actually an 11-year-old under their range, but this is the first sort of like age statement, official core range, I guess you could call it, from St. George's Distillery. So as you said, it's 46%, non-chill filtered, natural colour. It's matured in a combination of first fill and second fill bourbon, which is, to be fair, right up my street because I always tend to lean towards ex-bourbon maturation, to be fair.
Both. Yep.
I like a sherry cask, as much as the next man. But for me, ex-bourbon shows all the quality of the base spirit, and I love the spiciness, and just gets me in all the right places.
That's exactly what was going through my head as I nosed it here. This is much more up my street. This is much more kind of friendly to me as I nose it. I'm the same as you. I like a sweet wine finish. I like a sherry finish. I like to explore. But if I'm just going to take one bottle of whiskey to the couch, 9 times out of 10, it's going to be there's going to be refill
Yeah.
or certainly first, maybe ex-bourbon, certainly.
Exactly.
This is a nicer, much more approachable nose. Nice and
It is.
maybe this is a well-mannered. Maybe the age, maybe the maturity on this.
I think it's. I mean, obviously, I think one of the probably best known products from the English at St George's is their original, and this really is like a big jump from there. I think the original is kind of like an everyday sort of like sipping dram. This is like, you can really tell it's kind of like something different. It's just got a richness to it, a complexity. For me, there's loads of like green apples on the nose and some cinnamon, sort of like pastry, apple pie thing kind of going on, but it's still quite fresh.
Yeah, the apple thing is there, but it's tart. There's a sharp apple. This is what I was talking about at the start. This is clearly whiskey. This is clearly malt whiskey. This is quite cereally as well.
Yes, it is.
Biscuity even. This is but I think I could sip this and appreciate this as a nice whiskey. I think I could taste that this is not Scotch.
Yeah,
which is exciting, right?
It is, and you know, some of the flavors that we just mentioned there, you do use for Scotch distilleries.
Yeah.
You know, some of the freshness and arguably like cereal-led, grassy kind of notes. You know, you could argue associate with some lowland distilleries. You know, you've got your apple in there. You can find over in Speyside, but it's its own thing. You know, it's not trying to be anything else. You can tell that this is what it was supposed to be. Very much their own house style, and I think there are parallels with the original in the sense that I think that house style still carries through, but it is still a different whiskey, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it's different. There's a little kind of a herbal, botanical note on this. Makes me think. I don't want to go. It's not anything like a Genever or gin style botanical, but just a little green pine needle herbal note on the finish.
That's great, Joe.
The apple thing that you've put in my head is it's there. It's like like apple peel or something.
Yes, that's a good one. One thing I want to ask you though, do you think this is made using any peated spirit, or would you say it's completely unpeated?
Well, I'm one of the worst persons that you can ask about picking up peat and whiskey. What will happen is that and recently I've not been drinking a lot of peated whiskey. I would say I'm probably a bit more sensitive to peat than I normally would be. But I can sit and sip a peated whiskey at times and not pick up the peat. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. You taste past the smoke and the peat.
I do. Well,
I'm not, but what I would do is maybe leave the glass empty, cover it, and then you come back, and if there's smoke there, it'll reveal itself then.
Well, the only reason I ask is because there's actually one of the casks that went into this, and I believe it's only one out of the entire batch, was heavily peated spirit. Which
that's what's unique about Norfolk Distillery St George's, right? They're doing a peated campaign as well as unpeated. If I understand.
Yeah, that's right. So if you look back to it kind of started with the chapter releases as well, which when I first came across them. So I think the first expression I had from them was chapter 6, which is when it was very early days. I think it was 3-year-old. And you could tell there was potential there, but it was still a bit raw, a little bit feisty. But then I think a few chapters down the line, maybe chapter 8, I want to say they released heavily peated, and even now in their core range, they've got the original and you've got the smoky. So one of their core bottlings is a peated whiskey, which, and I suppose something we've not really touched on yet is their capacity. And you mentioned it, you know, if we add them all together, but given that St George's was arguably one of the trailblazers of the modern English whiskey scene. Their capacity is something like 50,000 litres, and they can max out with like 70,000.
Wow!
And you compare that to, you know, some of the distilleries up in Scotland that are just used purely for things like blends and the occasional indie bottling that are in the 2.2, 2.5, 1.8 million litres a year. It's insane.
No, that's tiny. That's absolutely tiny. Yeah, it's very small.
Really,
and when you think about the fact that they were one of the original ones, I suppose in our mind then we see it as a bigger distillery.
Exactly. It's
the brand. That's probably a good thing that they've managed to get the brand out there. We know the St. George's theme. We know the product. I have to say the presentation now, and I'm not talking about the natural presentation. That's clearly better. 46% natural colour, unchill filtered. Well done. But I have to say the aesthetic presentation is much better than the original stuff. Yeah.
So much better. And in particular, I love the aesthetics on the 11-year-old. It's just bright. It kind of reminds you of the fields of barley in Norfolk. It kind of gets that kind of association. The old branding, let's be honest, it was absolutely horrendous. And I'm sorry to the Nelstrops and all guys involved, particularly the design team of the label. But it wasn't particularly aesthetically pleasing. The old St. George and the dragon, and it was like, oh god. Please.
Yeah, and I think what happens is the scene kind of grows, and the more and more distilleries coming on board.
Yeah.
That doesn't really. That's not much of a definition there to use the kind of St. George's cross and things like that heavily. I think they need to carve out something that they can stand out on the shelf, not kind of. I think they've done it. I think we're much happier with the way the bottles look now.
Yeah,
that's kind of much nicer. It's a small thing. I mean, we say that we don't care about what it looks like on the bottle, that we only care about the liquid, but we're human and we are driven by aesthetics. We really, really are.
I have eyes. It's one of those things, isn't it? And I think as well, it's not just necessarily sort of applicable to the guys at St. George's. What I really like about some of the other distilleries that we'll probably get onto a little bit later is they've all taken something from their local area where they're based or their heritage and things like that, and they're using that in their branding, which I think is great. It's not just sort of like the name of the distillery in a fancy font. They've all got pretty niche little designs, which I think is really cool, and they're all playing to the strengths around the local areas. Which we saw
there's so much variation in English heritage and history and geography that it must be a deep mine, for them to reach and to tell stories about where they are, what they're located. And it's interesting you talk about the peated campaigns and things at St. George's, because they'll have local peat in the Norfolk Broads.
Yeah, I think I can't remember off the top of my head. I think they use peated barley from. I can't remember the name of the malting house in Aberdeenshire now. But I think
they won't have the capacity to do their own malting.
Oh no, exactly.
But imagine a scenario that they can actually say, in our just local area. I mean, that's fertile agricultural land right there. I mean, they would have been growing barley for all the brewers, all the distillers everywhere, in Scotland included.
Yes.
So they've got the barley there. They've got plentiful water there. They've got and they've got in the Norfolk Broads. It was actually that documentary I think I heard it mentioned. It was actually not James Nelstrop, but his son, the guy who's in charge now. I think it's Andrew. Is it? I'm not sure. He was actively talking about the fact that they've got the raw ingredients there, including peat.
Yeah,
that would be an interesting thing if they could malt it with their own.
That'd be cool,
because it's going to be a different peat from Isla peat, from Highland peat.
Yeah, exactly. You only need to look at the difference, as you say, between Isla and the Highlands, and arguably the Orkney, the Orkney Highlands as well. It's completely different geographical elements going into that. And I mean, let's face it, Norfolk is kind of the breadbasket of England. It's agriculture. It's a large piece of flat land that's full of farming fields, and a lot of Scottish distilleries are using malted barley grown in Norfolk.
Yeah,
massive proportion of Scottish barley, Norfolk barley in Scotch whiskey.
No doubt, absolutely no doubt.
So it's pesky English, making it, just getting our little signature in there again.
And just showing off that you get all the sunshine. That's what it's about.
I mean, I'm not being funny, mate. I'm in Lancashire. I can't even remember what the sun looks like.
We are talking about Norfolk in the southeast, though, right? More like in the southeast.
I got a spray tan this morning, so I can come on here.
A spray tan, yeah. I often joke that in Scotland we're pale blue and we have to tan pink. As I think it was Billy Connolly's famous line. Listen, I've just opened this, and you need to do the same. This is thanks to Tom Lindsay. Tom Lindsay sent me a couple of weeks back, actually, this White Peak, which is another New English distillery, in the Peak District, obviously. I imagine, is it the Peak District? White Peak?
Yeah, it's Derbyshire.
Derbyshire, okay.
It's the Peak District National Park in the middle of Derbyshire. Very nice part of the world. Lots of nice walks, lots of mountains. A bit like the Lake District.
Have you made it up to there yet? Have you been up to see them yet? Because I think this is a distillery that Tom Lindsay actually helped out at. I think he was involved there for a while. He was actually hands-on with them.
Right. I've not made it up there yet, but it is on my radar, because that is actually, I think, the nearest distillery to me is the Forest Distillery in Macclesfield.
Yes,
which is still a bit of a mission from where I live, to be honest. And then the second one after that is the White Peak. It's probably about equidistant, to be fair, from the lakes to White Peak from where I am. But so this is so what was this? 21-month-old spirit.
Yeah.
STR wine cask, American and French oak at 45%. Very nice indeed. And thank you for providing that. I'm really excited.
Thanks to Tom Lindsay. Cheers, Tom.
Yeah, cheers, Tom. Thank you, mate. Oh, hello.
"21 months. That's exciting."
I'll tell you what. That's 21 months old. Oh my neck.
And what we're seeing here as well is an STR is going to be so that's stripped, toasted, and recharred. That's going to be fairly active, but not active from an incumbent. So it's much more of a kind of a subtractive effect. I think that cask's going to have, taken kind of impurities out of the whiskey rather than adding kind of previous incumbent flavors into the whiskey. Additional. I think that's surprising to me. At 21 months, there is a hint of the new make thing that we were talking about there. The youth, it does come in, but it's not nearly as bold as the other ones. Maybe they're making this whiskey to behave a bit like that at a younger age, and it's only 45% ABV. It's softer. It's it arrives softer as well. But that's very encouraging, isn't it?
It really is. I'm very impressed. This is the first bit of spirit that I've had from that distillery. I've seen that they've done a couple of online tastings that I missed out on, so I'm really chuffed to be able to try this. Really chuffed. It's a lovely sort of like butterscotchy and red fruit, like dry cranberry thing going on the nose for me, and some really, really nice sort of like spice. But it's still quite clean, and the base spirit's clearly very, very good quality.
Good body, nice finish. Okay,
really, really good texture.
I don't know if White Peak have got any mature product out there. I can't imagine they would have if this has been sampled at 21 months.
No,
a wee map that I put the link in the chat will help us there. Let's see, White Peak Distillery. It says laying down casks, no mature product yet. I'm going to just copy this, put it back in the chat for anybody that hasn't seen this yet. They can download this map, and it might help you navigate some of the distilleries and whiskies that we're sharing tonight. There we go. It's a really cool asset, a really cool little graphic. And the only distillery that I could discover that's not featured on the 24 in that list is, and I'm not even sure that this distillery is actually making their own whiskey yet. I kind of just should have spent a bit more time checking. It was a Sacred kind of micro distillery in London.
Yes.
I know they're doing gin and things, and they've released sourced whiskey, but I wasn't sure if they were making their own yet. So it'd be interesting to find out. Amy Seaton had mentioned that there was a couple more that perhaps weren't listed there. It'd be interesting to hear what they are.
Definitely.
26 distilleries.
Definitely, but I mean, I'll be honest. I think when we had our chat this afternoon earlier, prior to that in the morning, I've actually got the document open behind me. I tried listing off the top of my head without Googling it how many distilleries that I could remember from England, and I think I got something like I want to say 17, 18, but I might be over egging it.
Yeah.
And just to see that map and see 24. I mean, it's like Dartmoor. I saw Dartmoor on there, which I knew about because they've just released their inaugural bottling series. I didn't know there was 2 Dartmoor distilleries. They're just down the road. So you've also got the Dartmoor Whisky Distillery and the Dartmoor Distillery. Just two completely different distilleries. I didn't even know the other one existed.
There's 2 London distilleries. Well, there's more than 2 London distilleries. Bimber's in London as well, but there's 2 with London in the name. There's at least 2 with copper in the name. So there's a kind of lot of it's kind of. I bet you were quite surprised when you hit 16 or 17, just kind of doing a mental brainstorm.
I was. I'll be honest. After 12, it was uphill. It was an uphill battle. Just sort of like racking my brains. I was sort of geographically searching the country, just like, right, okay, Yorkshire, you've got Cooper King, Filey Bay, yada yada yada. Right, okay, moving on. And it's crazy, just crazy. Yeah.
And it's kind of nice that when you start to, that's what the map's really good for, is that you're not just kind of making this mental list of names, but you're actually able to plot where they are geographically, which I think is important for you to kind of fathom the landscape. I don't want to rush you through these, but I'm going to bring in Richard in a little bit. And what I want to do before I do that is I want for you and I to get our kind of evangelist heads on, because I reached out to you. We arranged this kind of vPub together. And no sooner had you accepted coming on, I find that you've released a review of this next whiskey. The timing was absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
And I was so pleased. I need to grab a clean glass.
I'm cheating a bit. I'm just rinsing mine out. It's probably frowned upon, but
because I opened this and the arrival was hammer blow, wonderful. And it was a texture thing. Okay, this is ex-bourbon. I was already excited about it. I'd had experience with the previous release, which was called the Recharred. I knew you loved it. We shared a dram together in December, you'll remember.
We did.
We enthused about the fact that this was wonderful whiskey. It was young and vibrant and jagged and bold, but it was wonderful with it. And it was clearly not Scotch. That was the most exciting thing.
Yeah.
So we're always a wee bit nervous about how this one's going to be. And I think both of us are over the moon with it, right? This is the new Bimber, another London product. Now, this is very young as well. Is this 3 or 4 years old? It can't be any more than that.
Yeah, I think the oldest spirit again that Bimber have got is 4 years old off the top of my head. So it will likely be in or around a similar age to Recharred, to be fair.
I have to say that, if anybody's trying to get my attention, remember to mark any comments at Aquavite or Aquavite so I can see. I'm keeping an eye on the chat here to the right-hand side. I have to say that I introduced you as being quite calm and kind of matter-of-fact and down-to-earth in your reviews when you're kind of talking about whiskey.
Yep.
But I saw you actively animated when you were reviewing this. You were happy. You were excited about this whiskey.
Yes. Yeah, and I think for me, it's like we discussed about the Recharred. You know, when you just get something that just gets you, you know, it ticks all the right boxes, and there's flavors that you didn't even know you wanted that were there. And I think it's just the fact, particularly with this one in the latest review, I probably look like one of those like wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube people outside of car dealerships. I was moving around quite a bit. But it's because I think on the back of the Recharred, I was sort of ready to sort of be kind of like not disappointed, but I was like, well, it can't all be that really good. Top it? Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting is where the Recharred was all kind of jagged and complex and prickly and flighty. You know, every sip would be different. This is much more integrated. It's much more together and solid. And I don't mean that to suggest that one's better than the other. It's just different.
Yeah.
And yet there is something that connects this with the Recharred. It's difficult to articulate what that might be, but you can connect them. Hell's Wid is saying, would be interesting to see how younger English distilleries evolve as their whiskey ages and matures. It's really exciting, Helen, honestly. Already we're in a position that it's quite encouraging. And Greg Unrau is saying, is that a typo? Bimber, he's saying whiskey distillery, only 1,400 litre capacity. If you're looking at that map that I've shared the link, that's their still capacity, Greg.
Yeah.
So it's not the
annual
LPA, it's not the output, that's their still capacity, which honestly a 1,400 litre still is it sounds big, but that's wee. An average Scotch whiskey still, spirit still would be 8,000-9,000 litres. You know, quite a much bigger animal.
And interestingly, they've only just recently added their second still, which is pretty much exactly the same as the original. So it's, I believe, made in Portugal, and it's this lovely kind of little. It looks like a tulip bulb. It's really, really cute. Cute's probably not the word they want me to use. Actually, come to think of it,
is this Bimber?
Yeah.
I got an invite down there for the. I mean, lots of folk went along, and I kind of was like, "Oh, I know I'm missing a bit of a party here. I just couldn't make it." London seems like, to a lot of folk out there, London would seem local to me, but it's not. It's the same as anywhere in Europe. It's a flight. I can't.
Yeah. Yeah. No, totally.
Gregor's answered an interesting question actually, and Gregor McQueen, he's saying, just as I go to read it out, the thing jumps. It's like it can. So sorry, Gregor, I can't read it out verbatim, but he was asking, am I excited about Bimber as it is just now, or what it could be in the future? I'm excited about Bimber now, honestly.
Yeah, legit.
Okay, let's go.
Let's go in.
That's just.
It just makes my heart sore. Not like ache, but sore. It's honestly, the texture itself is just phenomenal.
That is not perfect whiskey, okay? Let's be clear.
No.
But that is amazing whiskey. That is amazing whiskey. And I always have to stop myself from saying that's amazing for being so young. I have to stop that because that's just amazing whiskey. Forget about the age. The age of it is incidental. That is wonderful whiskey. And I've poured this for a couple of friends already. The Richard, the last expression that came out, and the reason I'm buying these, and the reason that I'm evangelizing about the Richard next bourbon, I've got the inaugural up here. I've got the London Whiskey Club edition, and I've got another one up there. But these aren't things I can evangelize about with people because they can't get their hands on them. These, the chance of getting.
Yeah.
And that Richard, everybody I gave it to, it went down very well. I took it into the Good Spirits Company in Glasgow, who hadn't tried a Bimber yet. I took a large sample and shared it with them, and they were trying it, and they were saying, yes, damn it, this is good whiskey. So that's reassuring for you to hear that it's not just a purely subjective thing, that good whiskey is good whiskey.
Oh, totally.
Even if it's not your preference, you can still appreciate that it's good whiskey.
No, definitely. And I think, the key to any good whiskey is a good base spirit. But you can just tell the core DNA just stretches through the ex-bourbon and the Richard, and it's just fantastic. You're right, it's not perfect whiskey by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that's probably what makes me love it even more. I love its imperfections. I love how it's so raw. I love how it's just out there doing its own thing. And it just does it well. There's several whiskies, hundreds of whiskies that are arguably hyped or overhyped. But I think Bimber as a distillery do genuinely deserve the plaudits they're getting and the attention. I really do.
It's easy to overhype whiskey. When you're enjoying it and you start to get excited, it's easy to overhype it. But what you judge it on is not your experience with it, but the feedback that you get from other people that have taken you up, that have tasted your samples or bought on the back of your say-so. And when they come back and say, damn, I see what you were saying about that, it's a good whiskey. I don't think it's not perfect. It's not fully there yet. There are things about this that make you think, oh, that idea how it's going to be in the future. But they're already there. That is £65 whiskey.
Yeah.
That is fully delivering on £65 worth of whiskey. Skogsmard has asked an excellent question saying, how long do you think it'll take until we have whiskey regions in England like Scotland does? I wouldn't like to encourage that, honestly, Skogsmard. The reason that we've got Scottish regions is because of a historical thing. That the regions were very much identified by the surroundings, what was there, what surrounded them, the fuel source that they had, etc. That doesn't need to be the case with modern infrastructure. I think that you would force pockets and force concepts onto distilleries that doesn't need to be forced onto them. So I don't think that would happen. I don't know what you would think about that, Skogsward. Everyone has asked a good question as well. And he's saying, for those of us that do not or have not tasted these English whiskies, how are they different from Scotch? Is it similar in any way that we would know? That's probably the most difficult thing to articulate.
Yeah.
They are different.
Yeah. It's kind of, it is very, very difficult to describe, isn't it? Because, I mean, at the end of the day, it's still whiskey. And as soon as people hear whiskey, they associate it to whiskies they've tried. And I suppose it's another unique part about the English distilleries. They are not sort of like mimicking Scottish styles. They are carving out their own styles. So, for example, like the English are actively, they are open about this, they are actively trying to create a lighter, like you said, cereally, quite sort of like fruity, a little bit sort of like citrusy spirit, which is shown in their original. But then you've got things like, you know, the Filey Bay, which is again quite light, but you've got that kind of vanilla in there, you know, in that particular release, a little bit of spice. But then you look at Bimber, and that just jumps out the window. That's something completely different again. It's just it's hard to describe.
Yeah, and there's a qualifier here. You're not from the southeast of England.
Correct.
Yes. And you're so you're Lancashire, you said?
Yes.
So well, Lancashire, so you're a northern lad, right? You're from up north.
Right. So I have to tone my accent down for my review, so I'm used to doing this. This is my phone voice that I use for work. Otherwise, it sounds otherwise, I sound like the Dingles.
So people need to understand that that's akin to, you know, kind of a Scotland-England divide. I mean, the north of England to the south, and there is. It's not an obvious thing for you to grasp and enthuse about a London whiskey, right? So we take that out of it. There is a bias there because it's from England, perhaps. But I want to kind of stand up there for you and say there's no natural reason for you to stand up and evangelize about this whiskey other than the fact that it's grabbed you and you love it, right?
No, totally. And you know, it's no different to me. You know, loving whiskies from the Highlands. As you said, my dad and his half of the family are from around Glasgow and Motherwell and places like that. So that's like Auchentoshan, Glenkinchie, Isle of Bay kind of country. So, but as soon as I try something from, say, I don't know, like I nearly said Fettercairn, but not a massive fan. You know, and I love it. Then it's kind of a similar concept. I think for me, there's that whole, as you say, the north-south divide in England. As well as that, there's kind of arguably, I'm not going to go into this because I'm probably going to get absolutely slated. I'm a Lancastrian. We have a bit of a rivalry with Yorkshire. There was just this little thing a few hundred years ago called War of the Roses. It wasn't a big deal. Just decided who was king. You know, we've got things like cricket and all that kind of stuff where we have a bit of competition. It's a completely different cultural thing as well. Do you know what I mean? It's a subculture within another culture. We've got the counties, so yeah. But I think
it's the complexity of our nations, right? And it's totally. So just the point I'm trying to make is that you love whiskey and you're the same as me. You want to evangelize about good whiskey, and there's nothing better than being able to share good whiskey with people.
Totally.
There's nothing worse than saying this is great whiskey, and then everybody else comes back to you and goes, "No, didn't get it, Roy. I didn't like that whiskey." That's terrible. You need people to be experiencing the same thing as you. So when you can find a whiskey that you really want to share and enjoy, and I think that's what this presents. I'm going to bring in our friend Richard, who's been waiting patiently in the background.
Oh, fantastic.
And I'm going to uncork this. Yours is open already. I don't know if this is the right one to finish with, but we're dropping back down in the ABV, back down to 46%.
Okay.
By the way, can we talk about the Bimber as well? For £65, that's coming out at 51.8% ABV as well. It's excellent. But it doesn't behave like that on the palate. You wouldn't think.
No. I mean, we were both just drinking it then without water, right? So, I mean, it kind of goes to show, like, it's very easily, arguably dangerously drinkable at that strength. And you do find with younger whiskies, obviously, even at lower strengths, they can be quite prickly, they can be quite astringent, they can be quite spirity, as you sort of alluded to with the Filey Bay, quite sort of like new makey. personally, I don't find any of those traits, particularly the new make traits, in the Bimber.
It's very dialed. It's dialed very low. Absolutely. Let's pop this week. This is my first Cotswolds. I've had samples of this. Is the first one I've owned.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I'll bring in Richard. Now, I'm just hoping that I know I can give me a thumbs up, Richard, if you're good to come in. I know I can see you clearly. I just want to make sure I can hear him clearly. Let's bring Richard in and see how we go. Richard, hello. Okay, you've gone a wee bit dark, but that doesn't matter. The important thing is that we can hear you.
Sorry, yeah, mood lighting. But can you hear me?
Brilliant. We can hear you perfectly. Listen, thanks for this kind of impromptu just dropping in. Tom Lindsay had been feeding me a wee bit earlier on when he heard that the theme was going to be English whiskies. We had a bit of a discussion. I know Tom quite well, and he talked about this English Whiskey Society. You've been sitting in the background listening to us going, I can imagine that there's so many points that you would want to interject and go, and I apologise, but thanks for coming in and hanging around the background with us. And tell us about you, Richard. This is the first time I've even we've met at all.
I think we crossed paths very briefly at one of the London Whisky Club tastings, but I was quite in awe that evening of both the whiskies and the attended crowd. So,
were you there in the one in March?
Yeah.
Were you in the cavern there?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh wow!
I was the new guy.
Okay. I apologise. I really do apologise.
No, as I said, it was very brief. But hi as well, Andy, and thank you very much for having me on. I've been sat in the background, just really enthused. Really, I love all whiskey chat, but obviously I have a special affinity for English. It's weird, really, because I'm not someone who has been into whiskey as long as someone like Andy. You know, I've not been drinking it since my teenage years, or if I did, it probably put me off for a while. I actually only got into whiskey a few years ago in the proper sense, and as a Londoner who'd never visited Scotland, never been to a distillery, it was actually visiting Bimber, ironically, that really opened my eyes to English whiskey and made me think, well, you know, if there's guys doing it in West London in an industrial estate, and they're next to like a Chinese snack shop on an industrial estate in West London, it got me thinking, well, if they're doing it, who else is doing it? I obviously knew of a couple of the distilleries, but I didn't realize, like yourselves, how many were active, how many were out there. And it was actually quite hard to find that information. I mean, now it's becoming a bit more common. The map has been circulated quite a lot now. And I just thought, well, look, there's got to be other people out there that are keen to know more, that want to explore this emerging scene. And scene's a bit of a loose word at the moment, as you guys have both kind of alluded to. And so, yeah, it kind of grew out of that, and just a real interest in what is English whiskey and how can we make it more accessible and bring more people into it.
Yeah, and there is a sense right now, especially if you start to do what you're doing now, when there is this kind of, you know, this feeling of everybody kind of starting at the similar time, this idea of cooperation and collaboration, of getting together and realizing that that map is a fantastic mechanic to get people just to see what's available, especially when it goes along with what stage that they're at. Rough gives an idea of scale, perhaps, and which of them have got mature products available. That's a very interesting thing. Whiskey is one of these things that you don't need to compete. I mean, there's 2 YouTube channels on here competing for people's viewing time and subscriptions and minutes. But no, that's not what we do. It's whiskey. We hang out with each other. Distilleries have had a very symbiotic relationship for generations in Scotland, way into hundreds of years into the past. And I don't imagine it's going to be any different for English distilleries as well. Is there a sense of that already, Richard, do you think?
Well, so actually, and I won't give too much away that isn't mine to reveal, but I do know that the distilleries have been speaking, or some of them at least together, about, you know, looking at the future of the category. I think there's a real worry about, you know, trying to define something that doesn't exist yet and trying to kind of stamp a label on it. And actually, as you've experienced this evening, each distillery is doing quite different things. The regulations are slightly looser for the English scene. They don't have to adhere to the Scotch Whisky Association regulations, just the basic EU ones at the moment. So you know, who knows what the future will hold for regulations in Britain after the B word. But I think what's really great. And what I love about English whiskey is all of these distilleries, because of their scale, they're very much rooted in their communities. They're very much local businesses, employing local people, and their reach has, until recently, relatively been quite local. I mean, I say that Cotswolds have just done a massive launch in Asia now that Asia's back online with some of their products, and it's amazing to see that reach at the top end. But I think for the likes of White Peak, Henstone, like you said, Forest, these guys are not necessarily going to produce enough liquid that it's going to penetrate in the way that a lot of the Scotch that we come to know and love has done. So it's great that they've got that root in their local foundation, and that's really important, I think, to the scene and to each identity of each distillery.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just taking my first sip of that Cotswolds, and again, very, very encouraging. So the new make thing that we were talking about, that kind of new youthful thing, it's dialed right down there. It's very quiet. This is a well integrated, very easy, enjoyable thing with a lovely texture. I don't know what the casking is for this, Andy. Is this mostly ex-bourbon as well? It certainly tastes like it. Is there any sherry in this?
Ex-bourbon and red wine casks.
Ah, okay. And some red wine casks in there as well. And
Yes,
again, another fantastic, lovely texture, lovely body, lovely finish.
Mm.
I've actually got some of their Sauterne cask, which is a very nice release.
Wow, yeah.
I've got that to look forward to. I've not opened mine yet. I'm very excited.
So where are you located, Richard? Are you in London?
I am. I'm in southeast London, so I think I'm equidistant between East London and Bimber as my two closest distilleries.
Okay, suddenly you find yourself in whiskey country.
Yeah.
So tell us about the English Whiskey Society. What is it? Is this a subscription service? Is it a club? Is there a membership? What are you actually trying to build here? Because you're still in your infancy, right?
Yes, yeah, no, we're very new. We had a kind of a soft launch tasting back in March, a virtual tasting, and that was a great success. We had a really great buy-in from 6 of the distilleries who could get product out to us at that time, and we had about 50 people on that tasting, so it was a great success. The future is that we do want people to join this society so that we can communicate, obviously, news about the distilleries, share those amazing stories, talk about releases, run events. There's talk of a festival in the future that we're trying to pull together at the moment with the distilleries to kind of really put the English whiskey scene on the map from a kind of festival perspective. And then we're looking ahead at, bottlings, casks, and all the usual things that come with clubs and societies. So that's kind of the grand overview. At this stage, we don't yet have a website to direct you to, but we do have a sign up where you can send us your email and we'll add you to the mailing list, and you'll be the first to hear about the latest news and when we go live with membership and what that will entail.
In the description box below under this video, that link is already in there. I've included that already, the sign up link, and just in the live chat right this minute, so anybody that's participating live right now, 240 of you in, click on that little link and put in an email in there if you're interested. And keeping up to date with the English Whiskey Society and things. There's no membership or anything right now. It's purely a mailing list right now, I guess, yes?
Yeah, just a mailing list at the moment, but you'll be the first to hear when there is an official launch and a membership scheme and all of the great things that will entail. And we're obviously working with the distilleries to make sure that they are part of this journey with us. So.
Okay, wonderful stuff. I noticed that Richie Z said that he's managed to secure himself an older version of the Cotswolds releases. Listen, Richie, he's asked me if you should buy it. If the price isn't prohibitive, Richie, just go right ahead. And where you are in the States, it's going to be harder to get your hands on this kind of thing. So absolutely, all the feedback I've had and all the samples I've tried from Cotswolds, nothing has been bad, but it's all down to the price that you have to pay. If it's kind of $100 of that area or less, I would guess, where you are. Yeah, go right ahead. Based on this one I'm sipping tonight, I would heartily recommend it. Vin at No Nonsense Whiskey is a huge fan. The boys at Malt Review, and completely independent review site, have often been very complimentary about the current Cotswolds and excited about the future as well. So, Richie, if you can get your hands on a Cotswolds where you are, aye, go right ahead. And I need to thank everybody. There's over 240 of you in. I expected this to be a wee bit quieter tonight because of the topic that we were covering. And because of exactly as Richard has just talked about, and Andy and I were talking about earlier, there's not a lot of this whiskey out there. It's small runs, small batch. Yes, it's all going to go towards the enthusiast. It's all going to be bottled as a single malt, but it's got to spread itself quite thinly. So it may be tough for you to get your hands on it. But I have to be honest, as I've sipped through this flight of English whiskies tonight, this is an exciting thing. And I've talked about it. You've heard me say this very thing in the past. There's nothing that guarantees good Scotch whiskey more than good English whiskey, believe me. And I'm referring very much to that kind of that national conflict that we have. It's very tongue-in-cheek, very fun, and I mean that in a very positive sense. But really, Scotch whiskey has got its heritage, it's got its scale, it's got its foundation and its history, it's got its craft and its quality, and it's got its fans. Really, it's holding this ball. It'd be ridiculous for Scotch whiskey to volley that now. But all the world whiskies that's coming along now, they're competing with Scotch on a premium level. It's competing against the premium Scotches. And if Scotland just keeps doing what it's doing and focusing on quality for the releases that are based around that presentation for the enthusiast, there's nothing to worry about. There's no competition here. This is a very, very exciting thing to have. People making whiskey for flavour and engagement rather than just drinking. And that's very much what we are tasting here. Would you agree, Andy?
Absolutely. Honestly, completely. And, you know, kind of going back to what Richard was saying a little bit earlier, the English whiskey community, I'm not going to say scene, it's got real nice sort of like camaraderie about it. And good. I think it's not just every man for himself. It's like this whole joint effort, and that effort is not to displace Scotch. Let's face it, that's A, not going to happen, and B, not what it's about. It's about getting people drinking good whiskey, good quality whiskey, and just about that enjoyment and that engagement, and that's exactly what we're getting. It's just great.
The more popular whiskey is a broadband category, the more opportunity there is for all of its kind of subcategories.
Exactly.
Have you been excited, Richard, by what's been coming out? You've obviously been inspired to take this step, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't claim to be a whiskey expert. I haven't started a YouTube channel, and I don't do a huge amount of sharing my tasting notes because I'm still on that journey. For me, it's much more about trying to make this this exciting chapter in whiskey history accessible to as many people as possible, and just really doing some of the legwork that I know that I had to do myself when I first wanted to find out more about the community of English whiskey distilleries. So yeah, it's very much a journey that I just want to help people go on, and if we can help facilitate that and all drink good whiskey along the way. But my first visit to Bimber, I mean, the guys there, as you said, you know, they've got their own cooperage. They do everything in that small tin warehouse that they've got on this industrial estate. And you know, they're very, the attention to detail, and they're, you know, 7 fermentation tanks, and you know, the kind of the quality of their ingredients. You know, it really is something that takes a lot of care and attention, and you can really taste the love, I think, in that liquid, and in many of the liquids, like white peat as well. So I'm very excited to taste my way around England.
Absolutely. Andy C is saying, great topic. I know very little re-English, so it's a real learning curve tonight, Andy. I tell you what, I'm going to give away a couple of samples. Actually, I'm going to give away a sample of this Cotswolds, and I noticed that Toby Field Whiskey shared earlier in the chat was talking about how the ex-bourbon Bimber is almost impossible for anybody to get their hands on just now. So I'm happy to send out a couple of sets of samples here, a couple of pairs of samples. I'll take a question, any question from, well, let me read out a couple actually, because there's a comment here. Everyone is saying, I come for the friendship, not the topic, but you always have a great guest too, like icing on a cake. Everyone, thank you very much. Cresimir, thank you for your comment. And Falscraft, thank you for your comment as well. I'm not going to read it out because I'll blush, but thank you so much. Andy, give us a question, and any question, and the first person to answer will get a sample of the Cotswolds. Stop. The first person to answer will be able to nominate somebody else in the chat to get 2 samples. It's the way it works in the Aquavite chat. So it doesn't always go to the super knowledgeable people, but they nominate somebody else. Does that make sense? Somebody that's maybe not going to get a chance. And sometimes I'm generous and I give it to them as well. Give us a question, Andy, anything at all, just anything from the top of your head. And sorry for putting you in the spot. Richard, I'm going to ask the same from you in a minute as well. So
Blimey, the pressure. I'm assuming it has to be about English whiskey and not like my favourite colour or anything like that.
Yeah, go for it. Anything you like.
Okay, so there is a whiskey from a county in the southwest, one that's associated with a TV series called Poldark. Does anybody know what the name of that whiskey is?
Okay, as long as you know what it is. Can you see the YouTube chat? Can you see the live chat coming in?
I can. Yes, I'm keeping my eye on it.
There's about a 10-second delay, but the answers are going to be coming in now. So you're looking for the name of the distillery, right?
Yes.
Dartmoor.
Oh, it shares the name with the whiskey. To be fair.
Dartmoor. No, you're looking for more than that.
So there was a TV series called Poldark recently. It's from the county in which that TV series happens.
Cornwall.
Correct.
Okay, so that's Richard Hall. Richard, you and I are in touch, Richard. You can tell me exactly who you want to nominate for the samples to go through, and I'll make a note of your name. Well done, Richard. You were the first one to come in and say Cornwall. Now, that's given you a bit of time, Richard, to come up with a wee question just to ask the knowledgeable. They are quite knowledgeable folk, by the way, so don't be shy about asking something that's quite geeky. Don't worry.
Okay, so we've heard a lot about the new English distilleries, but which was the last English distillery to close before St George's in Norfolk opened its doors in 2009? So which was the last English distillery to close, leaving England without any distilleries for 100 years?
I know this one.
So selfish, isn't it? Just closing the doors and not thinking about everyone else, having to depend on the Scottish whisky industry for decades.
So what was the name of the last operating distillery before, I guess, this century, right? So early 20th century, it closed its doors. Che Francis is absolutely spot on. He says Clueless. Now, the only reason I know this is because I did a wee bit of reading and research. Philip Story has nailed it, I believe. He says Lee Valley Distillery.
Well, I'm not surprised that Philip's now that. I think he was alive when it was still operating. So,
well, I don't know Philip personally. Perhaps you do.
I do. It's fine.
Philip, well done.
Part of the same whiskey club.
Yeah. You might not know him for much longer, Richard.
Yeah. Philip, please get in touch with me directly, whisky@aquaviti.com, or through any of the social media channels, and nominate somebody else to receive the samples. And if anybody who has answered tonight, Richard Hall or Philip, if you don't have and you would like a sample of the Cotswolds or the Bimber, just tell me and I'd happily send a sample across to you as well. Fantastic. Steve is saying that's just mean. Steve Anderson is saying, I have to say, Steve, I have to be honest with you, that is quite a mean one. And I kind of had a wee kind of hope that people and somebody in the States would get it or something. But so Steve, I'll maybe send you a wee sample as well, just because I know that it's going to be tough for folk like you to get your hands on this kind of whiskey as well. And if I send it across to you, Steve, feedback to us and tell us what you think about it as well. Tell us if we're just shouting loudly and filling the room with hot air, or if we have actually got something that's quite exciting in front of us here. Richard, clearly it's exciting.
It's really exciting, and we can't wait to share all of our updates and announcements with you. So please do sign up to the mailing list, and we'll have some news very soon around how the society is going to operate and how we can get you involved and how we can get you drinking English whiskey. So if that's your aim after tonight, then that's the way to go about it.
I think I paid less than £40 for this Cotswolds. Would that be right?
On offer, I think. But yeah,
it's normally about 45, I think.
I think I picked this up for less than £40. You're right, Richard, probably on offer. That is a beautiful whiskey for that price. Forget about the age, forget about the fact that it's English. We're just judge it on whiskey at that price point. It's a gorgeous whiskey. And it's Moorish. The Bimber is very Moorish. It's difficult to reach past that Bimber, honestly. But this Cotswolds is a lovely vanilla butterscotch. Buttery is really, the main kind of takeaway tasting notes. It's a neck pour. I've only just put it in the glass. It's a lovely, well-crafted whiskey, and it doesn't taste like new, young, or raw whiskey. Andy?
No, absolutely, completely agree. And what I've actually really enjoyed about all the whiskies that we've had tonight is that they're all really well presented. They're all natural colour. They're all non-chill filtered. They're all of good strength. And I think that's just a testament to what these guys are trying to do. They're not trying to do things via shortcuts. They're not trying to make, hay while the sun shines. They are trying to do things their own way, and they're trying to do it right. They're carving out, like we said before, their own style. And this Cotswolds is lovely. It's charming. I think it's probably the way I'd describe it. It's, as you say, very buttery. It's quite, a nice little sort of like amount of fruit in there. You've got a nice cereal note, and those red wine casks have a bit of an influence as well. So I'm going to pour myself another little dram, actually.
Yeah. And I have to say that, a bit like what I said at the start of the stream, you've hit the nail on the head there. The presentation is they know that they're going after the enthusiast, the connoisseur, the people who are a bit selective, the people who are going to pay a premium, let's be honest, for a whiskey experience. It's not mass market product. You're not going to see a lot of English whiskey put out there at £25 sub £25 a bottle at 40% ABV and things like that. That's not what they're after, which is exciting for us. What I've enjoyed tonight, and the pleasure I've had out of this, is being able to taste through a flight of, I've got 6 drams in front of me now, is the definition. And the definition is more than just each individual style, comparing them backwards and forwards and being able to pick up that they are different. But the definition of a category, none of these taste like Scotch. The Cotswolds is the closest to Scotch style, I would say. Maybe the Cotswolds in a blind lineup would be the one that would maybe be the most difficult to pick out.
Yeah, fair.
But the rest of them, I would say, is clearly a style that's different, a wee bit different from Scotch, I would say. So I've put that link in, Richard. I'm going to put it in the live chat again for anybody to go that's interested in whiskey. Go ahead and just put your email address in that field there to stay up to date. I guess you're not going to spam people, Richard. It's fully only for people that are interested in the English whiskey scene, getting involved, keeping up to date with the news and things like that. And they don't need to be in England. They can be anywhere in the world to do that, right?
Yeah, anywhere in the world, sign up. We don't know whether we will be able to facilitate bringing you into the fold in person yet, but the wonders of technology mean that hopefully we can obviously do some virtual tastings in the future. I think they're definitely here to stay. So yeah, please, wherever you are, if you're interested, there will be information coming soon. So do sign up.
Absolutely terrific. Wonderful stuff. Thank you both so much, Richard. Thanks for dropping in at quite short notice to be able to share what you're doing. I hope it's been helpful for you as well. Is this your first vPub? Have you joined us in the past?
No, this is actually my first vPub. So I'm honoured on many levels. Thank you.
Okay, so you don't know about something called the quiz at the end?
I do not know.
It depends. If you're on a curfew, you're welcome just to take your leave and disappear out just now. But my friend Hoyt in the background is waiting, and he's going to come in and participate with Andy live on the quiz. And you'd be very welcome to stay and join us for a 10-question, multiple-choice whiskey quiz in which at least half the questions are about tonight's topic.
I couldn't possibly refuse you. I'd love to do that. I mean, you can't see me anyway, so I can just hide in the darkness if I can't get the answers right.
There are a few rules about the quiz at the end. You're only playing against yourself. There are no prizes. It's a bit like golf or something. You're keeping your own score. If you choose to share your score with the rest of us, that's fine. I won't bully you into sharing the score. The pass mark is 5 out of 10. It's fully optional, and it is multiple choice as well. Hoyt, give me a thumbs up if you're ready to come in and join us again, my friend. Wonderful stuff. Good to see you, Hoyt. Thanks for waiting patiently in the background. But I notice, and I don't know how this is happening, but time's going by faster and faster. I'm always trying to keep it to less than 2 hours, but that would give us about 14 minutes to complete this quiz. It's not going to happen, folks. I apologize. So if you're watching this on the replay, it means that it takes YouTube a while to render it. There might not be live chat immediately after. You might need to wait an hour or two for it to render in the live chat to catch up and things. That seems to happen if it slips over the 2 hour mark. Anyway, let's bring this quiz in, and I'll thank you all for your patience, and we'll start the quiz. Excellent. It's an easy one tonight.
I've heard
Yeah,
that.
all right. Yeah.
Whiskey in
Yeah.
the Six is in. Rob, you star. Thanks for joining us. We've been talking about English whiskey tonight, Rob. There's going to be some fantastic things coming out of England that you're going to be excited to try some of this stuff, Rob. Rob's got a fantastic channel over in Canada as well, putting out content on YouTube now for about 4 years at least, I think, Rob. Wonderful to have you in, my friend. Hellswood is saying, great topic tonight and great guests again. Thank you, Helen. Always a pleasure to have you in joining us as well. Hoyt is saying that's probably why I like the Cotswolds, closer to Scotch. There you go, Hoyt. You've been sipping along with us. Thank you, buddy. And you're picking up a serial note as well. You've mentioned Stewie Baby's saying fantastic and an easy one. He's sticking his tongue out, of course. You know what that means, the easy one. Peter Hunt is saying it's always easy according to you. I have to be honest, I think there are a couple of tricky ones in here tonight, but it's, you know, even the tricky questions, even the ones that are asshat questions, they're there because they're intended to make folk think about whiskey, about the subject matter and things, and get your mind thinking in a certain way. Whiskey shared the same night all. Thanks for a great vPub, Roy. Toby, I'm sorry you're not joining us for the quiz, my friend, but pick it up in the replay if you can. Thanks for hanging out with us again, Toby. Bud Jenkins is saying, I was worried you hadn't said it's an easy one tonight. I got it in there before the end, Bud. Andrew Butler is saying, oh no, not an easy one, Andrew. Yes, absolutely. You'll do very, very well, like you always do. Don't worry about it. Listen, good luck, everyone. Multiple choice. Let's get the wheels on the quiz. Question 1. The founder of the English Whisky Company, the late James Nelstrop, was also notable for what? I think this is a hard one to start off with, but it's well written about. Was he A, well known for chemistry, B, organic farming, or C, clay pigeon shooting? The late James Nelstrop was notable for what? Now, it's his son. Is it Andrew, Richard? Would you know? Is it Andrew Nelstrop?
Yeah, Andrew and Katie are the current proprietors.
So the face that we recognise with St George's Distillery in Norfolk now is Andrew Nelstrop. But his father, 45-year lifelong dream to start a distillery. He was the first functioning whiskey distillery in England when he started in 2006. Quite a quick turnaround. He managed to put things together quite quickly. But what is one of the other things? This is a remarkable man, actually, this gentleman, James Nelstrop. One of the things that he's also notable for is either A, chemistry, B, organic farming, or C, clay pigeon shooting. I think it's a banana skin to start with, boys. I have to be honest with you. Richard, do you know this one?
I feel I should know this, and it's one of those things that's really annoying me, but I can't for the life of me pin it down. So
that's okay. That's okay. Guesses are fine. I have to say that a lot of folk in the chat are going to discover that this is a bit of a banana skin. A lot of people are suggesting it's. Well, let's not say. Let's just ask Andy to guess, because I know that you don't know. Just guess. What would you guess?
Yeah, thanks, mate. I'm going to go with B, because it's
organic farming. You nailed it. Well done. Absolutely.
Get in.
He was one of, if not the first farmers in England to set up organic sheep and cattle farming as well.
Really?
Quite incredible. He's been all over the world doing consultative work and projects and things in Russia, Southern Hemisphere. Fascinating guy. The more you read about him, the more you realize that he achieved a hell of a lot before he started his distillery after 45 years. So if you answer B for organic farming, give yourself a point. And I appreciate that was a tough one to start. Hopefully they'll get easier from here on in. Question 2. The water source of the new Ardross distillery is Loch Dhu, which was also the name of what? A 10-year-old black whiskey, B, a famous 18th century blended Scotch, or C, an Indian malt whiskey? Graham Horner is throwing ass hat emojis at me. He's not happy with the first question to start.
The last word means dark or black, so that might be.
You're helping us out here, Hoyt. Loch Dhu. Indeed, Loch Dhu is Gaelic for Lake Black or Black Lake.
But there could still be a banana skin.
I seem to recall another whiskey that's got a similar name off the top of my head, but I'm doubting myself now. I'm doubting myself.
Are you dubious?
It's dubious. Yeah.
Yes. Very good.
Don't
Very good.
second guess yourself, Andy. Go with it. You know there's something rattling around in that head of yours. Of course,
fantastic.
I'm talking about the infamous black whiskey. The producers back in the time, this is a product that was around about 10 or so years ago. You can only buy it at auction now. It's called the black whiskey. It was distilled at Manachmore, actually, and it was sourced whiskey, and it was marketed under this name Loch Dhu. And they put down the colour, it was jet black. They put the colour down to the fact that it was a double recharred casks, when in fact, of course, it was just heavy, copious amounts of E150 caramel. It wasn't great stuff.
No.
But there were people out there that loved it. And it's actually quite expensive to buy at auction now. There's a newer version out that's distilled at, I think, Speyside Distillery from memory. And it's called Bendu. They're taking up the space in the market that Loch Dhu left. I don't recommend it to anyone. It's a nice curio. In fact, I've got a picture of it here if you want a wee picture of it. Look at the colour of that.
It's natural colour. Lovely.
Yeah. Colour means nothing unless they say on the label that it's natural. Then we can trust it. Anyway, if you answered A for Loch Dhu 10-year-old black whiskey, give yourself a point. Question 3. Before St. George's, Norfolk, when was the last English whiskey distillery in operation? A, 1881, B, 1905, or C, 1939? Now, you almost gave this away, Richard, but I think in the end it was me that gave it away. So consider this a freebie if you were paying attention a few minutes ago. This is a freebie. We're talking about Lee Valley Distillery, which I think was in London, Richard.
Yeah, so North London. I used to live up near the Lee Valley, actually. There's now an ice rink pretty much on the site where the distillery used to be.
Stratford, right?
Yeah.
So St. George's, it was 101 years then from Lee Valley closing. So obviously the answer is B, 1905, 101 years of no English whiskey being produced. These are good times. We live in good times to be enjoying whiskey, honestly. So if you answered B for 1905, give yourself a point. Question 4, which of these grain distilleries is located in the lowlands? We're back in Scotland again, but we're talking about grain distilleries, maybe outside of our comfort zone a wee bit. A, Invergordon, B, Loch Lomond, or C, Starlaw? Anybody that's been involved in recent vPubs would know this immediately, even if you weren't familiar with your grain distilleries. 7 grain distilleries in Scotland. Only 2 of them are located outside of the lowlands. One of those 3 then is clearly a lowlands distillery. Hoyt, have you any idea? Are you guessing?
Since I'm guessing not Loch Lomond, since it's lowlands. But I could be wrong. I might go with A.
Okay, Andy, what do you think?
Now, I was pinning my badge on C, but now I'm doubting myself. So
it's like blind tasting. You're second guessing yourself all the time, right?
I know. I'm under so much pressure to get this right. I have so little credibility in the first place. Yeah, do you know what? Sod it. I'm going to go for C.
Starlaw. Would you happen to know, Richard, or would you be guessing?
I'd guess A.
Okay. Invergordon is White Mackay. It's up in the Highlands, north of Inverness. B is Loch Lomond. Hoyt obviously mentioned earlier. It's clearly a highland. C, Starlaw, is in Bathgate, Livingston area, and is a grain distillery in the lowlands. So if you answered C for Starlaw. Now, the reason that you should have known that is that the only other distillery that's owned by the owner of Starlaw, Lamartine Cays, is Glenmurray, and Kirsty McCallum, the master blender for Glenmurray, was on a couple of weeks ago. And we talked about Starlaw, and that's the grain distillery that they own in the lowlands. Question 5 is always an image. I want you to look at this image. This was sent in by Russell, Russell Whisky on Twitter. He sent it to me thinking that this would be a good image. Clearly a distillery under construction or expansion here. What are we looking at? Is it A, Glenlivet, B, Rosebank, or C, Ardbeg? Is it a Speyside in Glenlivet? Is it a Lowland in Rosebank? Or is it an Islay in Ardbeg? Tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
I knew this. If it helps anyone, I knew it because I was there recently. I don't know if that helps anyone, but
I've got a gut feeling about this one this time.
Somebody just said Bunnahaven.
Hoyt, would you be guessing?
Oh, yes.
Richard, guessing?
Totally guessing.
Okay. Andy, do you want to tell us what your gut is?
I'd like to say B, Rosebank.
No. Unfortunately, buddy, this is actually the huge expansion on Islay at Ardbeg.
Nice.
That's what's being built there. So you'll see it if the Scotch Test Dummies video that I put out there, Dummies in Scotland, when we visited Islay, there's some drone footage flying over. You'll get to see the expansion that they're doing out there at Ardbeg, and that's what this image is. Russell, thanks so much for sending in the picture. Anybody that scores 10 out of 10 on an Aquavitae quiz is welcome to contribute questions, and I'm always very appreciative. Thanks, Russell. Question 6, where was the first English whiskey made in 2003? So when I'm talking about the first English whiskey, I'm talking about modern times, since the Lee Valley closed in 1905, of course. But where was it first made in 2003? Was it Hinks and Healy down in Cornwall? Was it Chase Distillery in the Midlands? Or was it St George's in Norfolk? Be wary.
Yeah.
St. George's was the last one to close in the last century.
We've been sipping St George's tonight. We had the 11-year-old St George's. Yeah. And that was he opened in 2006 after 45 years of a dream. The late James... I've forgotten his surname. What was his surname again?
Nelstrup.
Nelstrup, yeah.
Nelstrup, yeah. No, I've got a bit more than a gut feeling on this one, but after the last one, I'm kind of, my confidence has been completely...
I've rattled your nerves. I apologize.
I'm shaking. I am shaking.
Richard, just give me a thumb or a nod or something. You know this one, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Go ahead. Put us out of misery.
So it's A. It's Hicks and Healy in Cornwall, which is actually a collaboration between St Austell Brewery and a cider farm.
Exactly. So the mash and the brewing is done, the fermentation is done at St Austell, and then they send it out to the cider farm for the distillation, and they produced. They weren't the first to market. I think St George's were the first to market, but they were the first English whiskey, and they started way back in 2003. Quite amazing.
Very small volumes.
Yeah, but you can buy it for about that 65, 70-ish pounds. You can buy a Hinks and Healy, and it's the most mature product now. I would say. Well, I don't know what's in each bottling, of course, because it's so small. But theoretically, they've been doing it the longest, I guess.
Yeah, I think they've got a 9-year-old out at the minute.
A 9-year-old.
Yeah.
I've not tried it. I would be curious to try it. Hinks and Healy. Question 7. Which of these Speyside distilleries ran a partial triple distillation until 2007? Used to be partial triple, then they switched to just standard double distillation. Is it A, Benrinnes, B, Benromac, C, Benriach? Graham Fraser is on 6 out of 6. Graham, you star a full house. Killing it tonight, Graham. Well done. Oh, there's lots of low scores tonight. I'm going to make a lot of enemies tonight, I think. Richard McKean is here on a 4 out of 6. Good score, Richard, and it looks like a new name. Welcome in. Paul Taberner on a 2 out of 6. Paul. Sorry,
Richard's one of the McMira brand ambassadors.
Oh, fantastic. McMira.
Richard McKean is one of the McMira guys.
Excellent. Good to have you in, Richard. Good to have you watching with us. And Jimmy Legg is saying this quiz is not making me want to buy English whiskey. That's not the intention of the quiz, Jimmy. Your curiosity is the thing that's going to make you want to try English whiskey. Guys, would you be guessing, or do you? I think Andy, you know this one.
I'm going to go C.
Oh, okay. Hoyt
I went with A.
and
Your guess.
Richard.
I was going to go C, but it's a guess. So
Okay, I can tell you that Hoyt is correct on Benrinnes. The
Oh.
only official bottling from Benrinnes, from Diageo, is the Flora and Fauna Benrinnes 15-year-old. So at 15 years old, 2007, the Flora and Fauna is still giving you the partial triple distillation. But any younger Benrinnes is going to be double distilled. Be interesting to compare them side by side and see if you pick up a difference. I've done it, and I have not been able to pick up much of a difference. But Benrinnes does have that extra weight, that extra oiliness, that extra kind of body about it. Generally, but I think that they go for that. It's a kind of almost like a Mortlach style of whiskey.
Very heavy, very meaty.
Yeah, fantastic whiskey, Benrinnes.
Isn't Mortlach like 2.83 times?
2.81.
2.81, that's right. Yeah. It's on my list for things to cover in the future is partial triple distillation. But if you look at the way Mortlach do it versus the way that Springbank do it, and versus the way Benrinnes used to do it, they're all kind of slightly different takes on the theme, and it gets quite complex. So I think it would be an extreme geek fest if I tried to cover that, and I wonder who I would reach out to cover double distillation, triple distillation versus partial triple. So it remains parked for some point in the future, perhaps. Anyway, if you answered A for Benrinnes, give yourself a point. Question 8. Of the 24 English distilleries listed on the Cooper King map, how many have mature whiskies available to buy? I'm going to be quick with this in case people scan that map quickly to come up with the answer. Just guess quickly. Is it A, mature whiskies? 6 of them have mature whiskies that you can buy right now. B, 10 of them. C, 13 of them. Hoyt, what would you say?
I'll go with B because it's
Richard.
B.
And Andy.
Definitely some.
Good.
Do you know what? Just to be different, I'll go for A.
I was hoping that this question would have this impact. 13 mature English whiskies that are legally whiskies made in England can be purchased right now. That is fantastic.
I was so far out.
Isn't it fantastic?
That's
Mature
insane.
whiskey available from 13 English distilleries. Now, that's probably one a year since St. George's, right? It's amazing.
It's awesome.
So go out, explore, feedback, which ones are good, share with the community. Question 9. Oops, that's the English whiskey map. I've already dropped it in. Everybody's seen it, hopefully, just now. The link is in the description below. If no, it isn't, I've not put it in yet. I will put the link to this map. This is from Cooper King. It's a fantastic map, and I'll put it in the description below for anybody watching on the replay. Guys, remind me to do that, please. It's a great map. And that's the list. Spirit of Yorkshire, St. George's, Copperhouse, Wharf, Copper Rivet, East London Liquor, London Bimber, Dartmoor, Hexon Healy, Cotswold, Lidlow and Blakes. They all have mature product to buy.
No way.
Question 9. Constellation Brands bought High West in Utah, World Whiskies now. This is one for the Americans out there. For $160 million in 2016. And they also are famous for owning which brand of beer? Constellation Brands that now own High West. High West are an interesting distillery. They were doing kind of rye blends and these kind of bizarre. They did a Scotch blend once with a rye. But for a while they were sourcing their own product before they started to make their own. Bizarre that Constellation Brands spent $160 million for the brand. Quite incredible. But they also own A, Red Stripe, B, Corona, or C, Rolling Rock. Hoyt, I don't know if this plays into you as an American. No,
I was going to say Coors, but obviously it's not that.
Well, I don't know who owns Coors actually. But
Sure. You never know now.
Yeah, who owns Coors? Coors or Bush or who?
Did, but that was Adolf Coors, but I don't. Who knows? Player.
Yeah,
Oh gosh.
I'm going to give everybody a clue and say it's very current.
I'm going to say A, Red Stripe, just because I hear that a lot now.
Richard?
Well, I think you've given it away and it's B, but I would have guessed Red Stripe because I thought you'd have had to have drunk quite a lot of Red Stripe to spend that amount of money on High West.
Yes.
Savage.
Yes, absolutely. Wow. Absolutely. B, the Constellation Brands also own Corona.
Poor guys.
Yes, they paid 160 million for High West. High West, I've only tried one or two. They were lovely whiskies, but it's an incredible amount of money for that brand. So it's obviously very well regarded in the States. So let's jump into the lounge and see how the scores are doing. Russell Whiskey is not going to be happy with me tonight on a 3 out of 9. It's you're not even going to make a pass tonight, Russell. Unlucky. Malt Minion, Chuck, you need another point to make a pass mark. It's going to be a lot of people shouting at me tonight. Falsgraf has made the pass mark 5 out of 9. Lindsay Holman is saying 1 out of 8 and thanks for the freebie. Lindsay, I'm so sorry, my friend. Thomas Elmer, good to see you, Thomas. 5 out of 9 already on a pass mark. Megan needs one more for a pass mark. Greg's Whiskey Guide in France needs one for a hand mark, a pass mark. This shows that this must have been a really tough one tonight. I do apologise. Jimmy Jazz has made a pass mark on 5. I'm looking for the high scores now. Spiritworks Tom is on 7, as Graham Horner's on 7 as well. Excellent scores. Stefan Novak. So Stefan, you always do really well on 7. 8 out of 9 for Graham Fraser. My highest score. There you go, Graham. You know it. Or unless you're very good at guessing, which can be the case of occasion. Looks like Graham is the one to beat tonight as we go into question 10. If I remember well, I think it is an ASAC question. I apologise in advance for it, but you might have a bit of fun with it anyway. At least 20 of the English whiskey distilleries have spirit stills which are A, smaller than Macallan's, B, about the same size as Macallan's, or C, larger than Macallan's. Now, of course, we all know that Macallan is famous for having small spirit stills. It's one of their defining features, the size of their small spirit stills. But I'm asking, are 20 of the English whiskey distilleries, they have spirit stills which are smaller than Macallan, about the same size as Macallan, or larger than Macallan? I can feel the vitriol.
Smaller.
Oh dear. Steve A is angry. Ass hat emojis all over the place. Graham Horner is giving me an upturned Glencairn glass emoji. Lots of guesses. Okay, boys, give me your guesses. Andy, what would you guess?
I was hoping you go to the other two guys first, to be honest. Do you know what? I'm going to go for... Let's go for C. That sounded confident, right?
I'm going to go B.
I'm going to go B too, because we know some of them are quite small. We talked about that.
Macallan stills are around 3,900 litres. So even one of the smallest stills in Scotland are famous for being small stills in Scotland. They are huge by comparison to the English still capacities, and they are 20 of them are smaller than Macallan's. Only 4 of the English distilleries have stills, spirit stills, that are larger than Macallan. Sorry, boys. Sorry. But it's like I say, it's not about getting it right or wrong. It's making you think about these concepts, these ideas, to kind of scale it and position it and work out where it is. English whiskey is doing wonderful things, and it's pointed directly at us. It's not trying to be anything other than English whiskey. It's wonderful. And they're doing it on a scale that is firm. It can only ever be pointed at enthusiasts. They're bringing it out at great presentation. The prices are, yes, it's expensive. We have to remember 60, 65, 70 pounds for a bottle of whiskey is a lot of money. But compared to the other whiskies that are out there right now, the other new whiskies, the other small distilleries that are starting up, they are on par. And I think some of the English whiskey distilleries are bringing out amazing things. And it's no different from anything I talk about in this channel. If they're bringing the quality, if they're bringing the engagement, they deserve to be applauded, they deserve to be talked about, and they deserve to have somebody evangelize about what they're doing.
Absolutely.
I think it's good times to be interested in whiskey, and it's good times, honestly, to be interested even in English whiskey, the cheeky bastards. I want to say thank you to Richard for coming in at the last minute. Thank you so much for coming along. I wish you every luck and good fortune with the English Whiskey Society. Keep it about community, keep it about collaboration, keep it about positivity, and I'll support you all the way, my friend. If there's anything I can do for you in the future, I'll be more than happy to. Hoyt, my friend and the gentleman, Thank you so much. I apologise that we're a bit late getting you on to play this wee game, and I'm glad you were able to join us tonight, my friend. I can't wait for the next time you grace our shores again and we can raise a wee glass together, my friend.
And just in closing, I have to say this Cotswold Founder's Choice, even though it's 3 years old, it's chock full of flavor. It reminds me, every morning I start out with a cup of coffee and a digestives, and it reminds me of like wheat digestives, and there you go, and jam. It's great taste. It was a little dear in price, but
but it's that's what it is. I mean, it's very, very small quantity. It's very small batch. Yeah. It is you know, it is what it is. I can imagine it would be expensive. None of the whiskies that I've had tonight, I think, are inaugural. They're all kind of things that we can all, most of the time, get our hands on. We've got a sporting chance of getting our hands on. Andy, my friend, I love what you're doing on YouTube. It's a pleasure to have you back in the community and sharing your opinions with us all again. I wish you all the luck with it in the future, and it won't be the last time I have you in at the vPub, my friend. Thank you for joining and shining the torchlight for English whiskey tonight. I'll raise a wee glass and I'll say thank you very much to you all. Please stay until after the live is killed, and I'll raise this glass to say thank you to you all. Slanchava.
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 Andy, Hoyt, and Richard, wonderful stuff. Thank you all, you wonderful, beautiful whiskey folk and dedicated barflies. I was a wee bit worried that tonight would be a wee bit off-piste, talking about English whiskey. It was something that I wanted to talk about. It was something that I was quite intrigued by and excited about. And I knew that it was outside of my comfort zone and I had to take a few steps to explore it a wee bit more. And I did that, and I'm very, very glad I did. I have to admit that I was inspired to do it this week now, based on the arrival of that bimber. Honestly, that's what made me want to bring it forward and talk about this, because it's available now. As Toby mentioned earlier in the stream, it might be hard to get your hands on the ex-bourbon bimber right now, but it was a reasonable release, about 1,900 or so bottles. And if you can get your hands on it, honestly, if you don't like it, I'll buy the bottle from you. That's how much I think you are going to enjoy this English whiskey. Graham Horner has bought me a dram and said, another great night's crack, great guests. Now my bank account's going to cry. We don't need to go rushing out there and buy everything from all the distilleries in England. But, you know, the ones that you hear good reports about are the one that just kind of pass you by. They present themselves to you that you enjoy, you connect with. By all means, buy it. It's just another good string to whiskey's bowl, honestly. Precarious Dave is a new star. He's saying off-piste is where all the fun is. Said coming from the skier, of course, Dave. Thank you so much for joining us again. Spiritworks Tom is in saying, nice one, Roy. The impromptu live guest worked a treat. I'm very grateful, Tom, for your sample of the White Peak and for pointing us in the direction of Richard to come in and talk about what he's doing as well. Graham Fraser, thanks again, Roy. Great vPub again. Thank you so much. Thanks so much to everybody for the recent vPubs. The support has continued to be really fantastic. My next vPub will be a week from tonight, when I'll be welcoming in Alistair Day from a brand new distillery out in the Hebrides and Rassay Distillery, doing fantastic things. Similar in themes to what we've been touching on tonight, actually, a lot of it. I'm going to talk to Alistair about this kind of spirit that he's making out there, where he sees the concept of his distillery going, what he's doing about his new make, what he's doing about the sourced whiskey. Is he trying to represent what they intend to make in the future? Super interesting and impassioned guy, and a gorgeous distillery out there in Rassay as well. I'm excited to welcome Alistair from Rassay a week from tonight. My patrons will see me on Sunday evening for a very relaxed, very informal vPub on Sunday night, and I apologise to you all for not being able to do it last Sunday. Jimmy Legs bought me a dram, saying I'll be bringing you a Dalmore Segal malt and a Bowmore 15-year-old darkest as a result of this quiz, Roy. Jimmy, if it's you and I drinking them together, I don't care if we're drinking vodka. Honestly, so much of it is about you and I hanging out and just having a nice time. I hope you've enjoyed yourself, regardless how you got on with the quiz tonight, Jimmy. But thank you for the virtual drama, friend Slancher. I say thank you to you all. I look forward to seeing you in a week from tonight. And yeah, I hope you've enjoyed talking a wee bit about something other than Scotch for a change. Thank you so much. Slancha, you're very much loved, and I'll see you a week from now. Cheers.